Streaming live from Citrus Valley Association of Realtors. Welcome to National Ethics Day. Here's your host, Leigh Brown.
We're back! Are you guys so excited to talk ethics today? I'm grateful to each of you that signed up. I'm grateful to all the associations and brokerages and all of you out there who have decided to lean in today together to make ourselves better as a profession. A couple of housekeeping reminders, like every good continuing education program. You must stay tuned in to the whole program in order to receive your credit, and that is in specific for you at the Long Island board, make Mary Ann happy. And for those of you that are in states that require you to check in, you will see numbers flashing on the screen. Those of you that know what to do with it, you know this. The rest of y'all, if you see numbers on the screen, don't panic. It's not the government watching you through your continuing education. That is for tracking purposes, so don't stress out. And if you happen to see a fellow realtor stressing out because they're logging in just a minute too late, hold their hand and say, hey friend, don't stress out about the numbers because we got this. So welcome to National Code of Ethics Day. As you know, this is a requirement for all realtors to update their ethics training every 3 years. This year is the end of that 3-year cycle. So you, by completing this class today, will have achieved that for the National Association of Realtors. Any questions about your credit would be directed to your local association, to your education director. If you bring it to me, I love you, but I can't control your credit, so go to your local association for that information. Have to give y'all a shout out today. We have 28 states with us represented in some way, shape, or form. If you happen to be stumbling into this and it's not your association, then help them log in for next year. We want this to continue to grow as we get better together. And I have to give a little extra love to the Space Coast Association in Florida because they have been with us every single year of the program and frankly are the first ones to sign up. So high five Cindy, high five to the Space Coast. And the rest of y'all, I know you want some high fives. We're going to be divvying those up throughout the day. Never fear, this will not be boring. This will be fun, and we're going to make everything better together. And by the way, if you're in Matagorda County Association in Texas, hello to the giant movie theater. Talk about a small-ish association doing big-ish things to bring members together, because after 2020, if there's anything realtors want, it is to be together. So high five somebody if you're near them, hug them if you feel like it, and let's get into the space of ethics. And we're going to start that off by remembering that we live in the best country on the planet. We are lucky, grateful, and blessed every day to live in the United States of America, and you and I are the luckiest ones ever because we get to sell the American dream to all of our neighbors who have put their plan together and want their piece of America. We get to provide that. So wherever you are, you know the rules for the pledge, right? Attention, salute, and let's say the pledge together. So I can't see y'all on the camera, but my mother eyes are watching. Stand up and salute. Y'all ready? Attention, salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for helping me start this thing off in the best way possible. By the way, if you were listening to the live stream as we were getting the show started, yes, I bought this at Marshall's yesterday, and yes, I am that cheap, but you can be cheap and be a great realtor, just for the record. But to be even greater, let's get some social media jazz going right now. You'll notice that there are opportunities for you to showcase National Code of Ethics Day on your Facebook profile. So you can add that frame that says National Real Estate Ethics Day. You can add that to your frame. And also, you can add your Facebook cover image and go to nationalethicsday.com/participant. You'll find a ton of resources there. Why do I suggest this? Because friends, let's just be honest. The world does not think realtors are the greatest thing ever, despite what we tell them. They tend to think of us as either pointless, as you see on shows like House Hunters, or they think of us as just commission grubbers. And what you do every day is so impactful. You're the one that's listening to the needs of buyers and listening to the needs of sellers and helping them navigate a really challenging market. And there's no question that real estate's been the leading economic sector for the last several months. And the public needs a realtor to survive in multiple offers, to know what to do, to get great counsel and advice. And the best realtors for that are the ones who aren't just hearing about the code of ethics. They're not just saying they'll be ethical because it's part of being a realtor. You lean into the code of ethics because you know it makes you the most powerful and important professional you can be in every zip code that you serve and in every community. So let the public know that this means something. We often say as realtors there's a difference between licensees and those who carry and wear the realtor R with pride. Now is your chance to showcase it. And frankly, if thousands of us are doing this across the country, we can make an impact. Now, in addition to that, you're going to have questions, okay? Ethics is loosely defined as the competing definition of the good. Ethics is not a clear, black and white, yes, no answer. It's not the law. Ethics situations can move and they can change. And because of that, as you practice real estate every day, you run into situations and you're thinking, man, I don't really know if this is right or not. If you've encountered something, go to the Facebook page. In fact, leave it up all day long, because at facebook.com/National Code of Ethics Day, I have the most amazing panel of Code of Ethics experts there. They will be answering your questions throughout the class. So if you have something and you really aren't sure if it's a violation, should you turn it in, what's the proper outcome, you can ask Amanda Creel, Jill Christie, Shelley Duncan, Kara Mims, Karen Randolph, Carol Seal, and Stephanie White. These ladies have volunteered their time and expertise. They know the code in and out, and they are prepared to help you figure out your best path forward. So enjoy their expertise all day. I can't thank them enough for being such amazing resources. They are the pinnacle of what it looks like to be an amazing Realtor Association leader, Realtor, and executive, because they work in a lot of different roles. And I thank you again, ladies. So make sure you take advantage of that expertise. And as you talk about the conversations we have today, I know you're very anxious to get to 10.5. That's going to be something we talk about in depth. As you are encountering your own answers, your aha moments, hashtag your post, hashtag National Ethics Day, whether you're on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, or LinkedIn. And again, let's keep this conversation about realtors being something that's different than is often portrayed in the mainstream media. You already know that this is a project that I've done every year as a fundraiser for the REALTORS Relief Foundation. And hey guys, look, you're the first ones to see the rollout of the new logo, right? Isn't it beautiful? We love the green, we've got the house in there, so that's fresh and brand new. If you did not know, this is the 20th year of the REALTORS Relief Foundation. It was founded right after the terrorist attacks of 9/11 that killed over 3,000 Americans unexpectedly. And it was realtors who got together and said, we have to help. And your leadership team at the time was Martin Edwards, Richard Mendenhall, Kathy Watley, and Pat Kaplan. And those volunteer leaders were all trapped in various places because, as you remember, travel stopped. But they found a way to get in touch with one another, and the foundation was born. We raised $8.5 million in that first 100 days, and since the inception of the foundation, take a look at the screen for your stats, we have helped 38 different states and territories in times of natural disaster. We have awarded over $33 million in relief funds to over 17,000 individual families. It's amazing to me. I'm grateful every day that we as realtors don't just walk the walk, and we don't just talk the talk, we walk the walk. And the REALTORS Relief Foundation is so impactful. What you should know is that any gift made to the foundation, 100% goes back into communities. Today, so far, with the registration fees, we've raised over $40,000 for Realtor Relief Foundation, and you, my friends, are going to be challenged to help us make that a really big number before the class is over today. When you go to nar.realtor/RRF, which is on your screen and a little hard to read because I didn't catch that in the slides in advance, my bad, nar.realtor/RRF, any gift that you make of $50 or more, I'm walking off camera and my team here is going to throw up because I did. We're going to be doing some drawings tomorrow, so you can make a gift throughout the day. But there's going to be some custom knives that were made by a realtor in Tennessee, Eric Kistner, over in Tri-Cities. And then another amazing realtor has designed a training program for how you can manage probate and estate sales. She's donated an $850 class. And then I'm going to make some donations out of my website as well. So you should make a gift because you want to, but you might win a prize. So we'll talk about that more during the breaks. For those of y'all that are already tired of the commercials, never fear, because here we go. Y'all ready for some continuing education? Here's the official course description of the class. Understanding the Code of Ethics and its requirements makes us better realtors. And I got to point out to y'all, I know that most of you haven't read the whole Code of Ethics, and no judgment from Leigh Brown, I get it. When your iPhone updates, it says agree or disagree with these updates to the OS. You don't read any of that stuff. You click agree and say, just make my phone work. On the Code of Ethics side, though, if you will read it, you will understand how amazing this document is. You'll also understand that it's a living document. We update this regularly based on where we can do a better job as realtors to serve our communities in all ways, shapes, and forms. So in this class, we are going to look at all 17 articles of the code. If you've taken a class in the past, many of the most popular ethics classes tend to focus on the most egregiously violated parts of the code. We're going to talk about all 17, which means if you're a property manager, I got something for you. If you are a commercial realtor, you've not been forgotten. And for you residential realtors, you know there's a gracious plenty for you. So this is the part that you need to make sure you kept your screen on, stay tuned in for your CE credits. And with that being said, let's start talking about the Code of Ethics. It is our promise of professionalism, and if there's one thing that realtors love to say, I wish other realtors were more professional, because we say it about other people. We rarely say to ourselves, perhaps I could be more professional. I know that I can do a better job every day. I am a work in progress. My guess is that you are too. So let's look at the history of the Code of Ethics. It's actually fairly amazing that if you realize that before 1900, there was no Code of Ethics, there were not realtors, there was no licensing. And if y'all think about those old jokes about, sell you a bridge in Arizona or sell you some oceanfront property, that's an old George Strait song y'all might know, but he didn't write it, so I hate to even give him credit. But when you think about all those ways that people were scammed for years, it didn't make any sense, right? There was no regulation, and it was caveat emptor, which means let the buyer beware. Well, then in 1908, the practicing real estate professionals out there said, we need to get together and do something together that could make us better. So the National Association of Realtors was formed. Of course, it had a different name back then, but that's 1908. And then just a mere 5 years later, that same group said, let's put something in place to help us define what that professional real estate experience would look like. So the Code of Ethics was officially adopted, and the standards were focused on service to the public, commitment to professionalism. And then you think about those duties include duties to clients. I don't have to remind y'all, right, that we have clients and we have customers, and then we have the random rest of the public, and then duties to other brokers, which has fallen by the wayside in many regards, where we can absolutely do better. But we were one of the very first organizations to ever do something as broad and as strong as the Code of Ethics, to say we want to live better and we want to do better things. Now, if you look at that Code of Ethics all the way back to 1913, it doesn't matter if you're a commercial realtor or a residential realtor or a property manager, a resort manager, a land broker. If you carry the R, all realtors are bound by the Code of Ethics. And I need to land on that for just a brief second. And frankly, friends, if you're new to a Leigh Brown class, you should know that I love to rabbit trail because that's how I roll. It aggravates me when I hear members say that they subscribe to the Code of Ethics, and here's why. Many of y'all subscribe to magazines, and it's not on purpose. It's because some cute sixth grader came to your door and said, I'm selling magazines to raise money for the school or for the Girl Scouts or whatever it is, and you buy some because that child is very cute and you have $25 to give over, and then every month some magazine shows up in your house, and you probably picked something like Entrepreneur because your friends would be so impressed if they saw it in your house. but you don't have time to read it because you're a realtor. You're probably a little disorganized, a little bit ADD, but frankly, in a market such as the one we have, you're also working 24/7. So that Entrepreneur magazine goes into the stack of other entrepreneur magazines, and there they sit, probably in the powder room by the commode, because that seems to be where magazines that are unread hang out. I don't really know why, but that's where they live. But you don't read it. You're subscribing, but it's not part of who you are. I don't want you to say that you subscribe to the code of ethics either, because that tells me that you saw it. And it might be in your office and it might be in your house, but it's not in your business practices. You haven't adopted it yourself. And I think about it this way. I have to be bound by the code of ethics. It has to surround everything that I do. It has to help me temper my language and temper my responses so that I can be the most ethical professional possible. My challenge to you today is to start defining yourself as a realtor who is bound by the code of ethics. And when you look at the beginning of the code of ethics, you realize it was all built on the golden rule. And frankly, y'all, we should get back to teaching our kids the golden rule, because I'm not sure that the younger generation is hearing this as often as some of us that are medium or medium plus heard it in our lives. But you know the golden rule, right? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Frankly, treat each other better, right? If you know anything about my approach to everything over the past year, it all boils down to be kind, be cool, and be gracious, which is just another way to say the golden rule. By the way, if you like these graphics, they were designed by the most amazing Michelle, who is a team member of mine, and she's so wonderful to donate her time to this project as well. Those are all available for download at nationalethicsday.com. You can use them in your social media. You can put it in your listing presentations, buyer presentations. Just start thinking about how putting these messages into your practicing business can change what your neighbors think about you as their realtor. So our code of ethics has a major structure. There's 3 sections. We have duties to clients and customers. And I'm going to remind y'all, if you forgot, not every customer is your client. And this is particularly important with the words that you say on social media and the things that are in your marketing. I hear a lot of realtors say, my client did this. Friends, if you don't have an agency agreement with them, they're probably not a client. Even if you're operating in verbal agency, you've got to be very cognizant and cautious about that. It doesn't mean you treat customers poorly, but you owe a higher level of fiduciary responsibility to clients. So there's a huge section in the code about clients and customers. There's a section with duties to the public. That's the randoms that you haven't met. Some realtors like to think about those as all their future leads. What if we just go ahead and upend the world right now and stop referring to the people that call us and ask us questions or who live down the street? They're not future leads, they're neighbors. It will change your reaction and how you communicate with people if you would think about every interaction as one with a neighbor instead of just a member of the public. So just challenge yourself in that space. And of course, the 3rd section is duties to other realtors, which is where a lot of your questions and scenarios will come up that you'll want to put on the Facebook page and get some feedback on. Now we have my favorite phrase in real estate. I'm going to wager that for some of y'all, you agree with me 1,000, 100,000,000%. We love the preamble to the Code of Ethics, because what are the first words? Under all is the land. It's so beautifully written. So what if you want to use this in your marketing? Go ahead, right? You don't have to be a land broker. And in fact, you could be a condo person because you know how that works as well. But this is that reminder that what we do is tangible and it is real and it is very important. And that's where you've got to think about yourself as a realtor differently. Too many realtors call themselves just a realtor. I'm just an agent. I'm just this. No. If under all is the land, and land is a limited commodity, and we know everybody wants their little corner of it, they want their piece of home. What you do every day determines whether this neighbor is going to make it or not. And you might disagree with me, Lee, they could make it if they talk to another realtor. They could, but you might be their one best chance the one day they called you to ask about buying a home, to ask about their first rental property. What do I do with this house that I've inherited? If you understand how serious it is to be a realtor, and how important it is to your neighbors' lives, this one phrase puts everything back in focus. Again, you can go download these graphics and use them as you wish and start helping that message get out there to the public. Help people understand that we do see this business as a very serious endeavor. And in fact, there's a reason we've asked for essential status in all of our states and municipalities. For some of you, it was granted all along last year. For some of you, you're still fighting. I did not even know until this past week when Wes Graham, who is a Realtor leader in New Mexico, said that New Mexico still doesn't recognize real estate as essential. Well, this goes back to helping our elected officials understand that under all is the land, and it's very important. So with that being said, you've got your little history, we've got our background, you've got some, hopefully, viewpoints ready to roll. Let's start with Article 1. Article 1 references honesty. Why is honesty so hard to find in real estate? Well, I don't think it's because realtors are organic, natural liars. I think it is because realtors, by their nature, are people pleasers. You want everybody to be happy, and sometimes you avoid the really difficult information. But here's the scoop. You are supposed to look after your client. You protect and promote your client's interest, but you must be honest with all parties. And you notice that honesty, right? You know what we're talking about, material facts. Almost every one of you know in your state, you have disclosure forms, you have material fact situations, but you also have some realtors who will keep information to themselves because they forgot. Let's just put it that way. So here's how we're going to structure the whole class today. Those of y'all that have taken it in the past, never fear, there's some new case studies. Those of you that are new to the class, we're going to look at case studies. What a case study is a real-life scenario that happened somewhere, somehow. We don't have the names to protect the guilty and the innocent. The situation was turned in for an ethics possible violation. These get turned into your local board. So when you have the possible ethics violation, it goes to your local association. Inside your local association are some amazing volunteers. They serve on what's called a grievance committee, where these situations are heard. There are also professional standards committees that will hear these complaints as well. And I need you to understand this. Those panels that hear all of these scenarios are made up of your fellow Realtor members. So if you're the person who's really good at taking the 30,000-foot view and looking at all sides of an issue to evaluate right, wrong, guilty, not guilty, perhaps you should consider signing up for your grievance committee at your local board or your professional standards committee to be one of the very level-headed people who agrees to serve in that capacity. It is a wonderful opportunity to give back, but it also will keep you thinking about the best way to be ethical yourself. So all of these case studies weren't evaluated by the National Association of Realtors. They weren't brought to lawyers and pros like that. They were brought to you. And by the way, anybody watching this live stream who volunteers in grievance and pro standards, high five to you, because that's not an easy task. And it's really hard to keep your emotions at bay. And I'm grateful every day that so many realtors are skilled at that ability. So here we have case study. We have 1-8. These are all published, by the way, at the National Association of Realtors. If you want to read the rest of them, it's fascinating. I've picked out, frankly, the most fun ones for your viewing pleasure today in class. All right, so we have Seller A. Seller A has listed his house with Realtor B. Realtor B got an offer. Yay, earnest money, $2,000. And don't be laughing, y'all. This was before the run-up that we're seeing right now. I know you're seeing that number and thinking, that's crazy, Leigh Brown. I know. Put on your backward thinking, back to the future hat. So he got an offer with $2,000 earnest money. Seller A said, I'm cool with that. Well, then Realtor B didn't communicate with Seller A for 3 weeks. And then he made a phone call and said, that earnest money was returned as insufficient funds and your sale's not going anywhere. So Seller A filed a complaint of unprofessional conduct. Now is when you vote. If you're on the Facebook page, you can type a comment in. We have disabled comments on the live stream in some places so that we can make sure our questions go to our ethics peers. But even in your head or in your office, in your movie theaters, wherever you're watching this, do a quick vote, guilty or not guilty. In 3, 2, 1, you knew this one, right? He's totally guilty. Why was he guilty? He vanished. Realtors don't vanish. Look, guys, I know that it's uncomfortable to tell a seller that their sale fell through and that the earnest money was insufficient funds, but suck it up, Buttercup. We have really hard jobs. And when you have a really rough scenario, it is even more important to be in great contact with your sellers than when things are great. But I will just point out here, as a practicing broker myself, we are also supposed to stay in communication when things are great because our clients deserve that. So be a great communicator. Don't go 3 weeks without talking to somebody who's under contract or in escrow. All right, case study 117. Seller A has decided to retire. Oh, I am just so done with the working world. I'm going to sell my house and go somewhere else. So he interviewed a whole bunch of brokers, and amongst all of them was told to expect a sales price in a range of 150 to 158. It's a pretty tight range, pretty reasonable. Well, Realtor B said, well, I could make a strong effort at a listing price of 168. Oh, so he got the listing, right? He advertised the property. He held it open. He had several showings but got no offers. Well, then the listing's about to expire. So Realtor B told the seller, hey, seller friend, hey, let's go ahead and lower the price to 158 because, the market has slowed down. And then he got an offer for 150. And Realtor B said, look, dude, you ought to take this. You've been on the market for a while. We've done all the marketing. You need to take your 150. Well, seller A took the offer because he's retiring and wants to get rid of that house, right? And then filed a complaint against Realtor B and said that he was misled as to market value. This has happened to a lot of y'all, hasn't it? In the business, if you're a newer realtor, hey, welcome to the show. We refer to this as buying a listing, where one realtor goes in at a higher price in order to secure the listing. So guilty or not guilty, let's vote in 3, 2, 1. Oh yeah, he's guilty. How do we know he's guilty? Because when you have multiple brokers that have got a range that's that tight, and one broker's an outlier, something doesn't add up. So just a reminder that even though the markets are on fire right now, your files are supposed to contain your CMA and your comps and your justification for a number. And if the seller wants to pick a price that's outside of your recommendation, you should probably get a little signature here that says, this is above where we discussed. And you could call your legal counsel in your state. Many of you, as I do in North Carolina Realtors, we have this amazing benefit called Legal Hotline where you can call and get a legal opinion. Make those phone calls and protect yourself because we know that some sellers do select a high price. In this case, it was the realtor who selected a high price. And I'll just remind you, if you're tempted to take a listing that's too expensive, the market will react to that. And the market reacted here because he did the marketing. He had some showings. We didn't have the offers until he got it into the correct range. So I'll tell you as well here, this, friends, this is the one graphic. If you download anything I give you, download this graphic. Share this with your seller suspects and with your seller clients. The Code of Ethics can help you really help your clients understand where you're coming from on pricing models. In Standard of Practice 1.3, this is why you should read the Code of Ethics, by the way. And for the record, the first time I was shown this as a marketing technique was Alexis Boland in Pensacola, Florida. And when Alexis said it, I said, oh, snap, I'm going to use that. And as also a reminder, you don't have to recreate the wheel in real estate. When we give you great things, go use them, okay? So this is what Standard of Practice 1.3 says. Realtors, in attempting to secure a listing, shall not what? Deliberately mislead the owner as to market value. What does that mean? Well, that means if you know the comps show 150 to 158 and you say, I can do 168, that's deliberately misleading. Now, if you show 150 to 158 and the seller says, I want 168, and you say, look, friend, the data doesn't back that up, then you're not deliberately misleading. So this is where you have to really pay attention to the words that are used and to the process that you have in place, and also reduce everything into writing. By the way, if you're communicating with your sellers primarily by voice, then keep a notepad with you and take copious notes every day of your real estate business so that in the event that you're accused of malfeasance later on, you can say, no, I told him on June the 10th that here's the price range, and you've got a journal full of daily notes. that could protect you in an ethics hearing if you're behaving ethically. If you are misbehaving, pull it back in, okay? Let's get better. Okay. Case study 118. Oh, and by the way, I should mention this. In my listing presentation, I go over this before I get to comps. I want them to understand that their opinion of numbers doesn't impact my data analysis of the property, and I want them to know that ethically, I'm going to do everything I can to defend the price that I'm going to suggest. So our next case study is 118. Client A, here you go, commercial brokers, it's your turn. Listed and sold a commercial property with Realtor B. After closing, Client A learned that his tax position would have been more favorable in a trade instead of a sale. So Client A filed a complaint against Realtor B for not advising against the sale for an obligation to be informed regarding the laws. Realtor B said, now hang on just a minute. I told Client A to call a lawyer, and he didn't do it. All right, so guilty or not guilty? This is a little trickier, right? Not quite as cut and dried as the first ones. Is Realtor B guilty or not guilty? Vote amongst yourselves in 3, 2, 1, not guilty. You guys know why, right? Because this realtor did that classic amazing realtor thing of be the source of the source. Realtor B did not have to be a tax expert, but he ought to have one on his list. So he said, hey, call my dude, and the client didn't call his dude. That's on the client, that's not on the realtor, because you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink it. This is also a reminder to each of us. We should have a really good, thorough list of experts in all aspects of real estate so that when there's a question about, let's say, fungal growth in your crawl space, y'all are probably not mold and fungal growth remediation experts, although one of you might be, in which case you'll argue with me in the comments, and that's fine. The rest of y'all, you should have a remediation expert in your list if this comes up in your area, so that you can say, I don't know, let's call this guy. I have a situation right now where my client is purchasing a multifamily building that has a pretty rough roof on it. I don't know the extent of it, so what do? We call a roofing expert so we can get a third-party opinion from an expert. Be the source of the source. And I'll point one thing out here because it's super important when we talk about the tax implications in real estate. That client was obviously upset about a negative tax situation. If you ever wanted to know why you should be involved with what the realtors do in political advocacy, it is situations like taxes on real estate, whether it's investments or residential. If you weren't aware, currently there are some tax situations happening in Washington, D.C. where real estate will be negatively impacted. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on that, but I will tell you these are high-risk situations that could further reduce supply in our markets. And frankly, y'all, the last thing we need is a reduction in supply. If you want to be a part of those solutions and those conversations, text right now. Open up your text, open new message. For the phone number, you're going to put in 30644. In the message part, you will type in Realtors. When you send that, you will become part of our database for what we call to action. So if we do need to go to all 1.5 million realtors and say to them, you need to tell your elected officials to save the 1031 tax deferred exchange, there will be an all-member text sent out. We utilize this maybe 2 or 3 times a year. We did not use it last year. We did not use it in 19. But when you sign up, now you could be a part of the solution. So do that right now. And I forgot to mention that you've got this, I didn't forget it, I'm just going to tell you again, hashtag National Ethics Day. You can tag that, and anytime you talk about the work that realtors do, the hashtag for this is vote, act, invest. We vote, yes, realtors vote. We act, we do things like text to our elected officials, and we invest in smart political advocacy. So case study 125, Realtor A listed seller S's home. Buyer B made an offer contingent on inspection. Sounds pretty smart. Well, at inspection, the gas furnace was found to be in need of replacement. So buyer B said, I'm out of here. Realtor A said to seller S, hey dude, I need you to disclose the fact that the furnace needs to be replaced. And seller S said, I ain't doing it, and don't you tell anybody about it, Realtor A. You keep your trap shut. And Realtor A said, I ain't gonna do it. I am an ethical realtor. I am bound by the code of ethics, and I shall not fail to disclose a material fact. So they ended their relationship. Well, as most of you do, I know why you use MLS. It's not just to search for houses. It's to go behind the ones that you didn't get, that you lost, just to see what happened. You know, it's our way of closing the loop. Well, Realtor A was hunting around and said, oh, well, look, it's relisted again. With Realtor Z. No disclosures in the MLS. And so Realtor A called Realtor Z and said, hey, did you know about this furnace? Did he replace it? Because, you know, I'd like to know if it's been replaced. And told Realtor Z the whole backstory. Well, Seller S filed a complaint against Realtor A for violating confidential client information. What do you think? Is Realtor A guilty or not guilty of violating confidential client information? In 3, 2, 1. Oh, totally not guilty. You already knew that one, right? That's obvious. Because, frankly, the thing that makes me the proudest of that case study is that the one realtor called the other one and said, you need to know this. Because why? It impacts the neighbors. It impacts the future buyer. It impacts the public. And who would look like a bad egg if a buyer bought that house and then the furnace died and they did not do an inspection and there was a whole shenanigans going on? Everybody looks bad. I just got to remind y'all that the way we take care of each other with information and with being as transparent as possible within our laws and our fiduciary responsibilities impacts what the public thinks about who realtors are. I frankly love us. I love the competitors that are in my market that do great work every day because they make our entire profession look good. That's what happened here. The seller didn't like it because, frankly, Seller S should have had his hand slapped for misbehaving himself for hiding material facts. I'll just remind you one more time, when we look at the political work that realtors do, it's about benefiting the public. So just as these two realtors shared information to benefit the unknown buyer and to benefit the public, that's what our advocacy does, because y'all, most realtors and most of your clients don't know what the 1031 is. They don't know how a capital gains change could affect them. They don't know what it could mean if there are changes to our state laws, but realtors get that. So that's why we do this work every day, because there is no National Association of Homeowners. There's just us. And we have to stand in that gap because we have an obligation to take care of property rights in this country. All right, so Article 2, this one comes up a heck ton in complaints, and you can guess why, because this is about facts. So we as realtors have agreed, when we are bound by the Code of Ethics, to avoid exaggeration, misrepresentation, and concealment of pertinent facts. You are not supposed to reveal facts that are confidential under the scope of your agency relationship. Now, all my Florida realtors, I know y'all are transactional realtors, and I love you, but y'all know that doesn't get to give you an excuse to be snaky snakes. And I know that the snaky snakes aren't watching this broadcast, and I hope that if one of them is, they are finding the light and fixing everything right now. So we have case study 2-3. Realtor A was a property manager. Hey, property manager friends. Offered a vacant house for rent to a prospective tenant and said, yeah, it's in good condition. Well, the tenant moved in and then said, you hang on just a doggone minute. You misrepresented good condition because I got a clogged sewer line and a defective heater, and you knew Realtor A. All right, so is Realtor A guilty or not guilty? Oh, another one that kind of falls into that, well, I don't know, Leigh, and these when I love teaching this class live because I watch hands kind of halfway shimmy up, or somebody, I think I know what's going on, they halfway shimmy back down until they make a decision. And that's why, frankly, those of y'all that get stuck in the middle had ought to serve on these panels, because you're going to bring to us not a guilty before proven innocent mentality, but let me hear the whole story. So in 3, 2, 1, yeah, not guilty. Now I'm going to go back to the slide because I can hear your arguments through the video. I love y'all. Here's where you're arguing with me. You're like, but Leigh Brown, that property manager said that the house was in good condition. All right, so I'm just going to point out to y'all a clogged sewer line. How are you going to find out about that? Well, I'm a lady, and we're broadcasting live across the country, so I'm not going to get graphic about it. But there's just about only way that you're going to find out that the sewer line is clogged, right? So the property manager would not have known for not having occupied the property. The landlord wouldn't have known because the landlord has not occupied. And if you've ever tried to interview a past tenant, you know that is not really a great source of information. And the defective heater, well, we don't know what time of year this was, but if they moved in July, you might not know that the heater was defective, and it's not the realtor's job as a property manager to investigate every aspect, right? So that's where you have some, could go either way here. It does mean if you're a property manager, before you say the words good condition, do the best you can to check it out. Give the tenant the opportunity to check it out themselves as well, so they'll know what they're renting for their own good and quiet enjoyment. All right, case study 2.6. Realtor A was working with hesitant buyer C, right? Don't we all have hesitant buyer C right now? They've written 14 offers and gotten beaten out 14 times, and now they're like, I just don't know if owning a house is for me because I don't win, and they're really hesitant. And we're also in an economic climate where there are many unfilled jobs, and we have many people who still aren't back to work. People who are back at work are not sure if their job is certain or not because our economy is still trying to figure out where it is. Obviously, some states are more secure than others, but still, there's a lot of concern about the overall economy. So this could totally be right now. Well, Realtor A said to buyer C, hey, you know what? If you buy the house, then my office guarantees your equity back within the next year. Markets are rising. I know I can get you more money in a year. So buyer C said, okay, fine, I'll buy the house. All right, got the offer, woo! Well then, 6 months later, of course, buyer C had a job transfer. They're coming to Charlotte, North Carolina. They called Leigh Brown, right, and they came to Realtor A and said, hey, list my house because I got to go to Charlotte, and Realtor A said, well, you know, markets don't always go up, and the markets have changed, and so for us to sell your house, we're gonna have to do a different price than I originally told you. So buyer C said, not cool, filed a complaint of misrepresentation, exaggeration, and failure to make good on a commitment. I bet this is a fun sidebar conversation in some of y'all's offices right now. Guilty or not guilty? Is Realtor A guilty or not guilty of a changing market? Did they misrepresent, exaggerate, and fail to make good on a commitment? Yeah, you know the answer. 3, 2, 1, boom. Yeah. You knew this. Guilty. And you know the one word that gave it away, right? The one word no realtor should ever say ever in the history of the planet. Guarantee. Y'all, we can't guarantee anything. I mean, come on. You don't pick market conditions. I frankly wouldn't pick this market. I like a little more balance in my life, and y'all can say amen wherever you are. We can't name timing, because sure as the world, you think something's going to sell in 5 minutes, and it takes it 4 weeks just because. You sometimes make guarantees that you shouldn't make because you rely on things to never change. But if we know anything about the world, it changes. So don't make guarantees. Doesn't mean buyer C wouldn't have bought the house, but Realtor A could have given a little more balanced counsel and advice there. So let's move to Article 3. Oh, the dream of life. Can't we all just get along? I know. That's why some of y'all kind of hate Facebook, and you had to log into it today to go hang out with the article advisors over there who are ready to answer your questions, because people don't get along on Facebook sometimes. But you know what? We are supposed to. We are bound by this code of ethics. And what does it say? Cooperate with who? What? Other realtor professionals to advance your client's best interest. This, friends, is where my dad, who is a realtor emeritus and glad to be retired, so for those of y'all that are old guard, you can retire from real estate if you so choose. My daddy would say, we don't need to leave blood on the table. That's the southern way to say this. But we are supposed to cooperate to take care of our clients. Because, you know, for a buyer to successfully buy, the seller has to successfully sell, right? So here we go. Case study 3-4. Client H listed a small commercial property at a low price with Realtor J and said, now, before you do anything else, I've got a list of buyers I want you to call first. Well, then at listing, we have Realtor F, who had, unsuccessfully interviewed for the listing. And Realtor F called Realtor J and said, I want you to acknowledge me as a cooperating broker. Now let me add in here, for those of y'all that are residential brokers, in our multiple listing service, one of the benefits of that data sharing service is our agreement to cooperate and compensate each other. And that's why the MLS is not a utility. It belongs to the realtors because we're the ones that extend that offer to one another. Make sure that you know how to define the MLS because it's under a lot of pressure in the big world, which thinks they should own things that belong to us because of that piece. Well, in commercial real estate, there are some pieces in your multiple listing service, but in general, commercial operates differently. There is not one big commercial MLS. There's no guarantee of compensation. So Realtor F is doing the right thing here by calling Realtor J and saying, hey, if I bring a buyer, can I be compensated? Realtor J told Realtor F, well, there's a buyer considering the property, and we're not offering any cooperation and compensation at this time. There's no violation there, just so you know, okay? Well, I already told you the answers. Snap, I got away from myself. I do that sometimes. Forgive me, friends. Yeah, you know, guilty or not guilty. But Realtor F was mad, okay? So I'm just going to, instead of, I'll show you not guilty. Here's why, though, because it's commercial, okay? So let me point something out to y'all. If you're paying attention in the bigger picture of real estate, so the 30,000-foot view, which takes us all the way to bureaucrats in Washington, D.C., you'll know that currently a settlement is being negotiated between the National Association of Realtors, which is all of us as members, and the Department of Justice. It's entirely possible that in the near future, you as a residential broker will need to explain compensation to your buyers and not just say it's offered through MLS. So think about how the commercial world operates and how you need to define your value and come to an agreement with your clients up front when you first start working with them about how you're going to be compensated, and then get comfortable with making this phone call, because you may get a yes, you may get a no. And if you get a no after calling to ask, that doesn't make the other person guilty. I highly recommend, I'll say this again, if you're a residential broker, find a friend in your market who is a commercial broker, ask them how this works, and frankly, build that relationship so that you can send referral business back and forth in an area of expertise. All right, case study 3.8. Realtor A submitted an offer on Realtor B's listing. Hey, full price, woo! And again, y'all are laughing right now. You're like, full price, please, what a joke. With mortgage contingency, right? I mean, old school, that you could have any contingencies at all. Realtor B submitted the rejection to Realtor A and said, you know what? The seller has already accepted another offer by one of the agents in my office. Realtor A then saw the seller at dinner, who said, hey, I appreciate y'all bringing an offer. Man, there's nothing personal, but you know, this other agent was working in the same office as my agent, and so we had a special agreement, and I saved some money, so I'm sure you understand, buddy, and let me buy you a highball, and we'll call it a day. And Realtor A had that dinner party ruined and said, that ain't cool, and filed a complaint that there was a special commission agreement that had been undisclosed. This happens in a lot of markets, y'all. Many brokerage firms have a policy set up that a seller can receive a different rate of commission if the cooperating agent is inside that office. What do you think? Guilty or not guilty? Dun, dun, dun. Not guilty. Why was he not guilty? Because, oops, I went back too far as I clicked my button here. The realtor was not guilty because it was in the MLS, right? So in the MLS, no, we're guilty? Back up. That's how you, look, y'all think I'm lost my mind today. He would have been not guilty had it been disclosed in MLS that you had a variable commission agreement. He was guilty because it was not in MLS. See, now your offices are probably all blown up that Leigh Brown got confused. Welcome to my world. But this is how you got to think about things. Our data sharing service through the multiple listing can protect you if you utilize it properly. If you skip fields and don't utilize it properly, you can get yourself guilty of an ethics violation. And I'll also remind you of something else here that realtors forget sometimes. You're going to encounter buyers, sellers, and other agents in life. We may have forgotten that during COVID because many of you weren't in your normal relationships, in your normal dinner parties and cocktails and networking events. As life restarts for many of you, you're going to encounter other people. The way that you conduct your business is not secret. It is not hidden in an email. Everything can be found out. So conduct yourself with that reminder. You're not going to get every listing, y'all, and you're not going to get every buyer, and not every offer you write is going to win. That's just life. But the way that you conduct yourself during those transactions is going to impact your professional career over the long haul. All right, case study 313. Realtor A listed seller B's house for $1 million and listed it in the multiple listing service, which is what? A data sharing and cooperation and compensation agreement between realtors, not a public utility. Realtor C had some buyers and they brought an offer for $900,000. Realtor A took it to seller B and said, hey, I'll reduce my commission by a point since this is not the asking price and it's a little lower than expected. So seller B said, well, in that case, that helps my bottom line. That's cool. Well, then Realtor A called Realtor C and said, hey, buddy, hey, so I had to cut my commission to get this deal through. So will you split this reduction with me? And Realtor C said, man, it's a $900,000 sale. I'm all over that, yes. And then after closing, Realtor C filed a complaint that the commission was being unilaterally modified in regard to a transaction after the submitted offer. Now, for those of y'all that are not super nerdy, unilaterally means it was decided by one party. Bilaterally would be both parties in agreement. So just that reminder there. So what do you think? Guilty or not guilty of changing the commission after offer was submitted? Ha ha ha, right? This one's total gray area for a lot of people. But in 3, 2, 1, you will discover that he's not guilty. And you know why, right? It's the sequence of events. This is why I recommend that all realtors keep that written journal, right, of all these conversations. Because my guess is that Realtor A took his little journal to the hearing panel and said, I called Realtor C here and asked, and Realtor C said yes. That's the problem here. Realtor C can't change his mind after he said yes and also after closing. Now, if Realtor C had said, no, I don't agree to cut the commission, then Realtor A would have eaten the whole thing because it had been offered through MLS, and Realtor C could have said no, but Realtor C said yes. This, my friends, would be the own it part of your code of ethics. When you make a decision, you're probably going to have to live with that decision. So think about it, ask your broker's permission before you do things, and then move forward. Very uncomfortable stuff, but we're professionals, and I know that we can handle things in a really wonderful way all the time. And if you want to handle things better, you should know that at nar.realtor, which is your main realtor website, there's this really cool publication called Pathways to Professionalism, which is some tips on conducting a professional business. And there's 3 different groupings in here that are not duties, but they are respect for. So respect for the public, which would include things like locking doors back that you've unlocked. If you use the commode, flush it. If you turned on the heat, turn it back off. You know, treating somebody else's home like it belongs to them. And I wish all realtors understood that they've walked into somebody else's house and treat it as well as they found it. That's one of the sections, right? We have respect for property and respect for peers. It's available for download. If you're a broker, this makes an excellent training class for your agents. If you're an agent who doesn't have a proactive broker, well then friends, download it yourself and create your own training class and be better. Because if we all get a little better, then the realtors that you think aren't doing a great job, they may just rise up and surprise us all if we work together on this. And speaking of working together on getting better, there's a free program available to you as a Realtor member called Commitment to Excellence. You may have seen some of your peers post this online. It's included with your Realtor dollars, so it's not going to cost you anything extra. It's at C2EX, so commitment to excellence.realtor. It's a rabbit hole, though. I'm going to warn you. I'm a nerd. I take all the designation classes. I'm a junkie for real estate. I love this. I love all the ins and outs. And I thought for sure when I logged in, I'm like, oh, I'll crush this thing in 5 minutes and I know everything. And I had my comeuppance really quickly because I started missing things. And then it takes you down a rabbit hole where you can learn and learn and learn. I spent about 4 hours in there, and I came up for air and said, oh my gosh, there went half a day. And it was fascinating and great info, so I highly recommend that you go to c2ex.realtor. Those of y'all that already have it, high five. You should probably post it again through your social profiles so that your sphere will see that you're a different kind of realtor. With that being said, I'm going to take a break here at Article 4 because we are at break number 1. I have a couple of things for you to know during your required CE breaks. Go to the bathroom really quickly, refill your coffee really quickly, and come back because we're going to talk about our raffle items. We're going to see some information on this really amazing conference that you saw in the initial opening. It's called Revive, and it does happen here at the Citrus Valley Association in California. So stay tuned for some information during the break, and we'll be back in 15. Okay, so you have 5 minutes left in your break, so get that cup of coffee, and more importantly, get that telephone and computer out and go to nar.realtor/RRF and make a gift towards our 20th anniversary fundraising goal, remembering that we will be giving away some drawings for those of y'all that choose to participate. And when we get back from the break, I'll give you a little bit of insights to the REALTOR Relief Foundation. But what a wonderful opportunity you have to help us prepare for future opportunities to help neighbors, because y'all, natural disaster strikes everywhere and it's unexpected, but we as realtors know exactly what it means to be on call and available when we are needed. So if you can go to nar.realtor/RRF, our suggested gift is $50. You can do as much or as little as you like, because every gift is appreciated. And we'll be back here in less than 4 minutes to continue this class. social media to see who's posting things. And so thank you to those of you that are giving some shouts to National Ethics Day online. Help us get this message up and trending, friends. And I'm going to also give a special shout out to my NAR region, which is Region 4, because North Carolina participated as a whole state. Whoop, that's my state. South Carolina, also my state, because I believe in being an association member where you have a license, and Kentucky. So thank you for all three joining in Tennessee next year. Come on, man. So anyway, I appreciate you guys for being a part of this day. I hope that you've got all of your equipment back together and you're ready to roll. Remember that this entire event, the camera's got to follow me because I left my clicker over here, so you know, I'm a realtor, I forget things. That's how our people operate. We're very talented, though, at keeping going. Yes. So of course, this whole day is a fundraiser for the REALTORS Relief Foundation. And if you did not know, we are going to have a member-wide telethon occurring on September 10th, right ahead of the 20th anniversary of the terrorist attacks. So we are going to be asking everybody to make sure that every Realtor member knows about the great things that we do in our organization that are beyond selling houses, because we know that our neighbors matter whether they're using us right now or not, and that's what your gift to the REALTOR Relief Foundation does. And just in case you did not know, when a disaster strikes, those gifts go to all members of the community who apply and have their grants approved, not just to realtors. So it's not us looking out for ourselves, it's us looking out for our communities. And I can speak to this in specific because in North Carolina, we have had help for all kinds of events that have occurred. There was a tornado that occurred in downtown Greensboro, North Carolina, and we're not exactly Tornado Alley. And of course, it hit the most vulnerable part of town. And that's where the realtors jump into action. In fact, one of my fellow realtor members in North Carolina, Sophia Crisp, she took time off from work to help manage the grant requests and physically hand checks to neighbors. That's what the REALTOR Relief Foundation does. It's not just somebody somewhere maybe doing something. It's you and your colleagues who make this happen for your neighbors when nobody else is there to fill the gap. So you might be just like Sophia and doing this in your home market, or you might like to be more involved with our work in times of natural disaster. So nar.realtor/RRF, make your gift, because we're going to be looking at all the wonderful people who have helped us fundraise today, and we'll do the drawings tomorrow on Friday for those of y'all that need just a hot minute to figure yourselves out. All right, so let's carry on with our Code of Ethics training. We did hear all of your feedback on audio. We believe everything's been fixed, and we got your feedback on the numbers. We believe that's handled. So if you have a problem, just let your local association person know, and we are here to make sure that this works out for you. We got you, friends. We're realtors. We know how to iron out kinks. Even if I didn't iron this thing this morning before I put it on, hey, don't judge. All right, so let's talk about Article 4. Whoops, I went too far. Extra credit if you know where that phrase comes from. Secret secrets are no fun. Secret secrets hurt someone. Y'all remember what that's from? That's from that episode of The Office where they had hired Elizabeth to come to the office. That's one of my favorite shows ever, after MASH, which is the only other show. No, I take that back. I've also seen every episode of Little House on the Prairie and MASH and The Office. Everything else I've missed a few spots. But back to Article 4. Secrets can be a problem. Would y'all agree? I mean, that's one of the things you find out on a listing presentation. Hey, talk to me about this a little bit. And with the buyer, you're like, tell me about that brand new car you just leased after we checked your credit, friend. But when you are buying and selling, you need to make your position in the transaction or your interest known, telling the truth. Sometimes feels painful. You might be afraid it's going to hurt you, but friends, it doesn't hurt you. It can help you. However, we do have some scenarios that have cropped up. So we have case study 4-3. Realtor A listed client B's house. Realtor A said to client B, hey, you should take this offer from buyer C. I mean, it's less than listing price, but it's fine. Well, client B later filed a complaint against Realtor A for failing to disclose that buyer C was Realtor A's father-in-law. Realtor A at the hearing said, hang on just a minute, a father-in-law is not a member of the immediate family. He's like extended family, if you even call in-laws family. And we had two other offers, frankly, and they were both lower than buyer C, so I don't accept this complaint. What y'all think? Realtor A, are we guilty or not guilty of failure to disclose a relationship in this transaction? And some of y'all are probably thinking, but Leigh, it's an in-law. I know, right? You have to think through this. Think carefully, friends. In 3, 2, 1. Yeah, he's guilty. I know you don't like all of your in-laws, but they're still your kinfolk. And as we say in the South, we don't hide our crazy people. We trot them right out on the front porch for the world to see, including your in-laws. And the craziest part about this whole thing, y'all, let's take a look at that case study. What could have fixed the whole thing? When Realtor A said to client B, hey, I got a buyer over here, it's my father-in-law. Is it possible that client B would still have accepted that offer? Yes, especially if the other offers were lower. The big mistake here was Realtor A pretending he didn't know that was his own father-in-law. Come on, y'all. That's not rocket science. This is just being a reasonable person and sharing reasonable information. Because, by the way, your clients have the Facebooks and the LinkedIns and the Googles, and it's not that hard for them to figure out to whom you are related, unless you're not connected to them on any network, which is a different discussion altogether. So here we go, case study 4.5. We have client B who listed a vacant lot with Realtor B. And he heard that some other lots had sold for $150. Y'all, where do your clients hear about sales prices? Tax records. There's this one website. It rhymes with willow trees. There are so many websites out there where they can find what things have sold for. So remember, they can actually find this themselves. Well, Realtor B said, yeah, they might have sold for $150, but yours sucks. And so I think you ought to list it for $97.5 because you ain't worth $150. And the client said, you're right. I have the worst lot ever on the planet. You're right. It's terrible. Gave him the beat down, and then they got an offer at list price. Hey, after only 2 weeks. Woo, in land world, that's not bad. And client B said, well, you sure about that? Because maybe 97.5 was too low. And Realtor B said, nope, I think you had ought to take it because obviously getting an offer at list price proves that I was right. So the client said, all right, and buyer C got the lot. Dun, dun, dun. Later on, client A discovered that buyer C sold that same lot to buyer D for, is that right, $165,000. And that buyer C was the brother-in-law of Realtor B. Oh, and that buyer C had acted on behalf of the realtor in the purchase. Y'all, this is like an actual, like a reality show playing out, isn't it? You're all sitting there thinking, are you for real? Yeah, these are real life stories. So client A said, this smells really bad, and charged Realtor B with collusion in betraying his interest and failing to disclose that he bought the property on his own behalf. Not even hard to see this one, is it? Just shady, shady, shady. So guilty in so many ways. So first of all, let's just dissect this really quickly, because sometimes you do list something under market, and sometimes it's because the client wants a quick sale. If your client wants to list at $97.5 and it's worth $150, what had you ought to do, friends? Get it? Yes, that's right, in writing, where your client says, I need a quick sale. Make sure that you are protecting thyself. And if you're trying to talk somebody into listing it for less, then perhaps don't be the shifty, shady buyer on the other end trying to flip it out, because this makes me want to pull a Barney Fife. And if y'all don't remember Barney Fife, do you remember he carried his bullet in his pocket in Mayberry and he wanted to do a citizen's arrest? I want to do a realtor's arrest and yank this license, but they have not yet given me that power. If you believe that Leigh Brown should have the power to yank licenses, I think you should put that in the chat somewhere, because I would really enjoy that far too much, frankly. But anyway, let's move along. We know he was guilty in 1,000 different ways to Sunday. So let's go to Article 5. where you can tell them how you feel, right? We're going to tell some things here. Article 5 is an interesting one because it is all about disclosing. Oh, wait a minute, this would also be a violation for that previous case study, present or contemplated interest in any property to all parties. So I want to remind you here, it's a great example. Many of the violations in our case studies can fall under multiple articles of the code. That's one of the questions you can be asking on our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/National Code of Ethics Day, and ask our professional team of experts over there, hey, I have this scenario, which article does it best fall under? Because we as realtors don't want to take one situation and punish somebody 15 ways, because that's not cool, but you want to make sure it falls under the correct article. You'll also notice that if you read the NAR.Realtor case studies in full, some of them have moved from article to article where they best fit and give us a better example of how to examine and understand or interpret the Code of Ethics. So with case study 5.1, all right, we have a buyer and a seller negotiating an apartment building on their own. So we have Mr. for sale by owner and Miss, I don't need no stinking agent. Well, they couldn't agree on anything. I know, right? Everybody put on your surprise face. They couldn't agree on a price. And so they each said, all right, fine, I'm going to call a realtor. And the other one said, fine, I want to call a realtor. That's fine. And what they agreed to was, let's average the numbers and we'll move forward. Hey, that sounds pretty grown up and smart, doesn't it? It sure does. Well, after closing, the seller learned that the buyer's realtor was also the property manager on this subject apartment building and also managed a whole bunch of other properties for this same buyer. So the seller accused the buyer's realtor of bringing in a lower value than market in order to benefit the buyer and the management relationship. So if you are too far past math to remember how averages work, I can't call your names out because I can't see who that is, but I know who you are, and I love you anyway because you are probably very good in English. So those of you that don't really love averages, we take our number 1 and number 2, add them together, and split the difference. So if you have 100 and then 200, the total would be 300 divided by 2 is 150. And that's where the number could absolutely get skewed if somebody is creating a number that's not verifiable in the marketplace. So that being said, this is coming from a seller against a buyer's realtor who got roped in order to create a price. So is this realtor guilty or not guilty? I think we all agree guilty, right? Because what was that realtor doing? That realtor's thinking, man, if I can help my client get this apartment building, then I can manage these and he'll love me more so I can then manage everything forever and I will have income. Don't be like that. If you are engaged for a specific situation, be engaged for that situation. And just as in the last one, let's just go back and look at where it could have been fixed. When they were each engaged to come up with this price, would it have been just as easy for that buyer to say, hey, the realtor I'm calling is the one that manages my stuff? That would probably have solved everything because we don't know that this number was wrong. You notice we don't have any idea if they actually came up with a false number, but it was the perception, right? A lot of what happens to us in life where we get ourselves in trouble is the perception of what we've done and not what we've actually done or not done. So those of y'all that are sitting there thinking, well, that buyer's realtor is a snake. Buyer's realtor may have done nothing wrong, but still got busted for not disclosing their relationship, all right? All right, so I'm going to show you all a little example here from the social world, and I have blocked out, I believe, enough information for you not to know who this person is. I have blanked out their face and taken out their name and location. This was on the Facebooks and also on the Instagrams, which is one thing I want you to consider as you're looking at your social presence. Make sure that your social presence is ethical. So look at this. This agent posted, other big news today, I officially closed on my first investment property. So if we stop there, hey, good job, Realtor. You're investing in the product that we sell. You went to financialwellness.realtor and you learned about investment properties. Good job. It's a beautiful 3-family, also known as a triplex, at an amazing price. Good. He got a fair deal. I loved being hang on a minute, a what? A dual agent for my sellers and myself. That's when I did clutch my pearls. I will be honest, now y'all know why I wear pearls is, first of all, I don't have to think when I put them on because they match everything. But second of all, so I can clutch it when I look at the Facebooks and say, are you freaking kidding me? Being a dual agent for my sellers and myself, stay tuned. This is just the start. The start of what? Oh, come on, look. Y'all, do you see all of the problems here? He might have paid a fair price and treated everybody properly. He might have. However, what is stated here can cause a lot of heartburn and a lot of question marks in people's minds because he talks about an amazing price. We can generally believe that to be a lower than market price when you are the buyer. And then he's representing his own sellers and himself. I will tell y'all, you are talking about a liability issue right here, and for the record, many of your errors and omissions policies would not cover these kinds of shenanigans. So if you haven't had a sales meeting with your E&O provider recently, it's a great idea to do that. And also brokers, make sure you're watching your agents on social media. Agents, make sure you're turning in your social post to your broker so that if they see you getting out of line, you don't wind up in Leigh Brown slides, all right? I'm just saying. And I will point out again, though, if you are the realtor who wants to do things with investment properties and you don't know where to start, we have education available as realtors through the National Association of Realtors. Go to financialwellness.realtor. It's a really cool site. It's not going to cost you anything except a little bit of time. You'll be asked some questions about where you are with your retirement planning and with your future financial planning, and it will give you some suggestions, guidance, and education so you can make great decisions. It was the brainchild of our national president, Bill Brown, who's from Oakland, California. He was our president in 2017, and one of the things that frustrated Bill is the number of realtor members who don't own their own homes for a primary, but in addition who don't own investment properties at all. And for most realtors with whom I've spoken, the reason they don't have their own rental portfolio is they're not really sure how to do it. There's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of concern about numbers and how do you do this. So with Bill's guidance, many of us, and I was fortunate to serve on that team, helped put together this tool so that you can make great decisions for your financial future as well. Just when you make the purchase, don't be foolish on social media and don't be a dual agent for your clients trying to get it for less market and then brag about it. Oh, my head. All right. Article 6, here we go, side dealing. Y'all know what side deals are? You know, sometimes we call them a side hustle. That's really popular right now. Some people think of a side hustle as Uber, but in real estate, there are other kinds of side deals, but you notice what you have to have. You could have a side hustle, side deal, but you are to avoid side deals without your client's informed consent. Now, this is a case study that some of y'all are going to think, Leigh Brown, this would never happen in my business. You'll think that a lot of these things would never happen in your market, in your business, but y'all, lean in close and remember that sometimes you will be confronted with a scenario that does not look like it's going to be a scenario because on the surface it looks okay. And then the more time you spend in it, the more trouble you wind up in. So the point of all these case studies is to help you go into every opportunity to serve a neighbor as buyer or seller or tenant or landlord with the most ethical eyeballs on the deal possible. So Realtor A is managing owner B's apartment building. So yay, property managers, nice work. Y'all are in the high headache and low margin business, and I give you all the props that you deserve. Realtor A then said, hey, there's a vacant lot next to this building. I think I'm going to buy it. Hey, owner B, you cool if I buy this and build a parking lot? And the owner's like, that's fine. I don't want a parking lot. You knock yourself out. Well, Realtor A did so and then raised the parking rate 6 months later because he's like, hey, I know what the market's paying. I'm going to raise my rates. And owner B said, well, now hang on just a cotton picking minute. What do you mean you're raising those rates right next to my building? You should have raised rents for me instead because our people have limited budgets and they can't pay raises for everything, and you stole my raises because the parking increase accidentally substituted for a rental increase. All right, so a lot of y'all are not in commercial, you're not in property management, so you are the level-headed residential realtor who's observing this from a distance. What do you think? Do you think that Realtor A is guilty or not guilty of basically not looking out for the client's best interest, right? Because we had a side deal, didn't inform him about the parking rates. In 3, 2, 1, yeah, he's not guilty. Y'all know why, right? It's the same thing I pointed out in a couple of earlier case studies. Notice what happened here with the knowledge and agreement of owner B in that second bullet point. If your client knows and has said, I'm cool with that, you can proceed. But again, what should we have in hand? A daily journal with all of our communications written down where you said, look, I called owner B. He said, cool, buy that parking lot. And once you own it, friends, you don't have to tell the owner that you're raising rates to market. He could have, but it's two different scenarios altogether. The important thing here is tell as much as you can up front. The other important lesson here, buy real estate. Now, I don't know that I would want to own a parking lot in a downtown area right this minute because with COVID, those revenues have fallen off. But it's also a reminder that real estate is cyclical and that different kinds of real estate operate differently, which means, and I'll say this with love because I have heard this said more times in the Clubhouse than I can even shake a stick at. Clubhouse being the new social media site where there is spoken conversation. You don't have video, nothing's recorded, there's no chat streams, it's just people talking. I have heard a lot of realtors say, markets always go up. Friends, I hate to lick all the red off your candy, but markets do not always go up. And even right now, while your residential markets are still increasing, commercial is wildly different, whether you're hospitality or retail, shopping mall, medical building, industrial, warehouse, land. There's all these different sectors inside commercial, and then you've got land, you've got vacant land to be developed, you've got land that's maybe a hunt and lease, land that doesn't perk, and you've got land that's a parking lot. All of these different sectors operate independently from one another. So for all that's holy, would y'all please stop telling people that markets always go up, because they don't. All right, and one day the market's going to go down. And I want y'all to still be the most amazing professional resource to your neighbors because they will need you when markets go down just as they need you when markets go up. So let's look at our next article here. We have Article 7. And if you're wondering why we don't have as many case studies in this section, these are not the hot topics. When we get to Article 10, y'all, we're going to have a gracious plenty to talk about. So just, enjoy a little bit of motion because we're going to spend some time with 10. So in Article 7, we have the situation of who pays whom and how do commissions work and compensation work. And you should know that in the Code of Ethics, it states that you will accept compensation from only one party unless you have what? Full disclosure and informed consent, right? So can you work for two parties? Indeed you can if you have what? Full disclosure and informed consent. Informed consent would be more than them saying yes. Think about this in terms of what your state provides in the way of agency disclosure documents. When you're explaining to somebody what it means to be a transaction agent, a buyer agent, a seller's agent, a dual agent, a designated dual agent. When you are explaining those categories, you are giving the neighbor a chance to give informed consent. Friends, if you just slide that paper in front of somebody and say, sign here, that's hard to call that informed consent. Now, I might lose that argument in a court of law because I'm not a lawyer, but my mother in me says, I would not want my children signing something if it had not been explained to them or if they had not had a chance to read it. And think about this as well in regard to DocuSign. Some realtors send things through DocuSign and do not explain what the person on the other end is actually clicking, because y'all know some of your clients get so excited about electronic signatures, they're like, oh, I can click and sign my time. Like it wasn't a race. It wasn't a race. So for you to provide informed consent, you got to slow your roll just a little bit, okay? Full disclosure, obviously full disclosure is a little easier than informed consent. So we have case study 7-1. We have buyer A who engaged Realtor B. Hey, I'm looking for a property and these are the specs that I have for what I need. Well, Realtor B listed seller C's property. Y'all, couldn't you see this happening right now? A low inventory market. You've probably got a stable full of buyers that are ready to buy as soon as you find them something, and you get that come list me call, and you're like, I love a come list me call. And it was perfect for buyer A, except for price. So seller C said, you know what, I'll sell to buyer A. And Realtor B collected a buyer fee and a seller fee. Well, after closing, seller C found out that Realtor B was paid by the buyer, and he accepted less than list price because the realtor talked him into it. So Realtor B said, well, now hang on a minute, I had buyer A first. He was my client first before seller C, and that was a fair market price. And you said yes, basically, so that makes it a fair price. Ooh, it's a little bit of a sticky wicket here, right? Because y'all are sitting there thinking, this one can go multiple ways, Leigh Brown. I don't know which way to go. But you're going to have to vote here. Guilty or not guilty? In 3, 2, 1. Guilty. Why? You know, the easiest thing in the world. Look at bullet point C, or the bullet point 3. Seller C agreed to sell, and the realtor's collecting the fees. From that point previously, could everything have been disclosed? Yes. All Realtor B had to say to seller C was, hey, I'm listing your house. I've got a buyer, but he probably can't pay full price, but I'll let him know, I'll ask him. He's going to be paying my fee. And you go to the buyer and say, hey, I'm listing this house, that seller's going to be paying my fee too. Just like those earlier ones, y'all, is it entirely possible that the clients being served would have said, we're cool? They might have, because they want a successful transaction, they want the house, but they don't want to get bamboozled in the process. And I know that main reason realtors don't do full disclosure. I know, you're afraid you're going to lose the client, you'll lose the commission. I'm going to tell y'all what my daddy told me on day one in real estate, and he told me every day until he retired. If you take care of people first, the money will find you. In a situation like this, that realtor saw a chance to collect a bunch of money and pretty much hoped that nobody was going to get upset later. Hope is not a business plan. Your business plan should be, let me just tell everybody and make sure they all know, and then I'll get paid when I get paid. The other thing I'll point out to you here is a conversation we had in my office in our team meeting a couple of weeks ago, which is the money can't mean more to you than it does to your clients. You have to be able to detach and help them make great decisions, which is all about full disclosure and informed consent. Now we have Article 8. And some of y'all are probably too young to know what I mean by money under the mattress, but those of y'all that are medium to medium plus to old, you know what money under the mattress means. That means putting money into what you deem to be a safe place. Yes, so in real estate, money has to be handled professionally and be tracked and follow all of your trust account guidelines, which means we know that we must, if we're going to be bound by the Code of Ethics, keep the funds of our clients and customers in escrow. And if you are in states that don't do escrow, you may have it in a trust account. So this would be a designated bank account for the client and customer funds. Seems pretty simple, right? I mean, in North Carolina, if you open a trust account, you have to take a trust account class. There's no secret to the fact that for every state in those disciplinary actions, when I know how y'all do, you do the same thing I do. You get that email, and you're like, oh, the back of the bulletin, let's go see who's in trouble this month. And I felt bad in North Carolina this past month because there was just one dude in there, and so he was really obvious. Usually it's a whole page, but they're a little behind at the commission. But anyway, most of them revolve around trust accounts and funds being held incorrectly in trust accounts or in escrow. So let's look at case study 8.1. Realtor A was the listing broker for seller B, okay? Presented a signed offer to purchase to buyer C. Can I just point out here to those of y'all that are actively practicing, for the love of all that's holy, please stop telling me you're bringing me a contract. You are not bringing me a contract on a listing. You are bringing me an offer to purchase, which becomes a contract when all parties have signed it. So can we just get the language right? Okay, I had to say that. Get that off my chest. Okay, so anyway, so Realtor A brought this signed offer to purchase on behalf of buyer C to seller B. $10,000 earnest money. All right, now we're dealing in real numbers. Leigh Brown was deposited into Realtor A's personal checking account. Buyer C said, I can't buy this one. I've had my auntie has passed and I can't buy this house, so I need to cancel this contract. I need my money back. So Realtor A was unable to return the funds because his personal, I can't do this one without laughing, because his personal bank account had been attached since the receipt of the offer. For those of y'all that have never been in trouble with the IRS or the feds or the government, when your account is attached, it means they put the locks on it and say, your money is our money now, you thief. So he couldn't touch his money. Well, Realtor A said, well, now, but this was very unexpected, and it should be straightened out quickly because it's just all a misunderstanding. This was just a mistake, and it'll all be fixed in 3 or 4 days. And for buyers, see, that's not a great inconvenience. You can just wait. I mean, I don't even have to count to 3 on this one. You all know because y'all are giggling in your offices, movie theaters, and all of your Instagram posts right now. Yeah, totally guilty. And you all saw it right away, didn't you? In bullet point 2, where it said the money was deposited in the Realtor's personal checking account. Your money does not go into a personal checking account unless it is what? Your money. And what is your money? Commission dollars. Money that is an earnest money deposit or a trust account deposit goes in what kind of an account? An earnest money, trust, escrow account. It goes in the correct account. If you are a broker, I don't care if you are a at-home, all-alone, one-man brokerage, if you are holding trust funds, you have to have a separate account. If you are a property manager, separate accounts. It's not hard. The banks don't charge you to hold the money, y'all. I mean, we make this so much harder than it needs to be. But frankly, my favorite part was that buyer could just wait a few days because this was all an accident. And I hate to be the one to tell y'all, but if the IRS is interested enough in you to attach your bank account, it's not exactly an inconvenient mistake because there are some real things that have gone on. So we absolutely know that in this scenario, Realtor A was guilty. So please be a good broker and be a good person monitoring those escrow and trust accounts. And if you're a realtor who's thinking about opening your own office, getting your broker's license, and opening up your own amazing firm, look at all of the trust account scenarios and ask yourself how you can carefully and thoughtfully and efficiently process and safeguard every dollar that belongs to the people who have entrusted you with their largest financial instrument. All right, so Article 9, and y'all know how this goes. You could finish that sentence, right? If it ain't in writing, it ain't real, right? The Code of Ethics has codified what is in many of your state legislatures, definitely at your real estate commission, that transactional details should be in writing. As we say in North Carolina and in many of your states, if it's not in writing, it's not enforceable. Words get misunderstood. Verbal agreements are the death of all of us, and frankly, that's the reason you don't really want buyers and sellers conducting real estate without their realtors present, because how many of y'all have had a buyer to say, well, the seller promised me X, and the seller say the buyer said they didn't care about Y, and you're thinking, I wasn't there. I don't have any idea what's going on, and suddenly there's a fight. Keep it in writing. This is so important, and it's so basic. And again, I'm going to mention it for, this is the 7th time. Keep a journal of all of your phone calls, because in writing also means reducing that verbal conversation to a notepad so that you've got some kind of a record of the conversation that you had. And I'm not saying that y'all suffer from memory loss, but many of you are older than I am, and I am an undisclosed medium age. We forget things. And when we talk about CRS in real estate, it tends to refer to the Certified Residential Specialist, which is the best designation you can earn on the residential side, just as CCIM is the highest level on the commercial side. But I'm referencing the other kind of CRS right here, and that's why you need to keep everything in writing, okay? So here is moving on to Article 10. This is going to run us into our break. So we're going to take our break a little bit later than usual. So if you have to jump up and down, make sure that you check in if you have to do that. And we might take a break halfway through Article 10 because I'm just noticing the clock. So here we go. Article 10 is front and center for everybody. And there's a couple of things I want us to remember here. Actually, you know what? I take that back. We'll keep our break on time, but we'll get to the 10.5 stuff after the break because it's its own special world right there since it's new. So we'll go over the rest of Article 10 in the meantime. Article 10 says what you do for one, you do for all. That's fair housing. Plain and simple. If you do it for one person, you've got to do it for everybody. This isn't hard, y'all. It's kind of how all of us wanted to be treated on the playground, that we had a chance. And when you tell some people they don't have a chance, then you're violating not just the code of ethics, you're violating federal fair housing, you're violating basically decent humanity. So this is be kind, be cool, be gracious. So the way I start this conversation with my sellers is with this particular graphic, and I do think you should swipe this one to put in your listing presentations and your buyer presentations, because all of our neighbors need to understand that as realtors, we take fair housing seriously. This is not a joke. It's not just something that's aspirational, that we live this. And the best way it was ever taught to me, and probably for many of you, is fresh corn, which helps us remember all of the categories of federal fair housing protected classes. So you have familial status, race, equality, sex, handicap status, color, opportunity, religion, and nationality. Now, some of you are thinking, but Leigh Brown, where is gender identity and sexual orientation? Where are those? These are your federal protected classes. Those two groups are protected by the Code of Ethics, which goes beyond federal fair housing. So this is another chance for realtors to say, I am taking the federal stuff and going +1. And that's a wonderful opportunity for us to showcase another difference between those who wear the R and those who are licensees who are not a member of the Realtor Association. And when I say that, just remember, I'm not suggesting that everybody who doesn't wear the R is unethical and they are not worthy of earning their business. I'm just saying they haven't agreed to it. So there's a difference. There are ethical real estate professionals who are not realtors out there, and frankly, I hope one day they'll join the association so they can work together with their peers to do great things. In the meantime, though, they didn't agree to wear the R. When you did, you said, I'm going to be one step ahead of where the rest of the world is. So in Article 10, it basically says you'll provide equal service to all clients and customers, period. Now you'll see this graphic at the top. That's one of your available graphics from NAR. So if you go to nar.realtor, when you log in with your NERDS number, that's your National Realtor Database System number, and my super nerds all know it by heart. My not yet nerds, you'll learn it at some point because you can download cool graphics like that, and then you can plug it into your social profiles. And what a great way to kind of quietly pop it in here and there to say, I'm cool helping all of my neighbors. That would probably grow your business too. I'm just saying, just be smart here, help your neighbors. So when we look at case study 10.1, this happens to many realtors. We have a couple has reached out to this Realtor A. It's a minority couple. They said, we want to spend $390 to $435. We'd like to be in Cedar Ridge. Realtor A said, I hear you, friends, but I think you have champagne taste on a beer budget because Cedar Ridge sells from $540 to $660. And the couple said, well, just show us what's available in our budget. Well, he did. And they said, we don't want any of that. And then they filed a charge alleging racial steering in a service. Would you say that Realtor A here is guilty or not guilty of racial steering? It's a little tricky. I always get multiple responses on this one because I love how y'all look for loopholes for realtors, and we don't ever really look for loopholes for the public. Realtor A is not guilty here, and may I explain to you why? The skinny that happened here is what happens to many of us. A client has a geographical desire, but what they want doesn't exist. You can't make houses exist. And some people just don't accept that. This couple didn't accept that. They wanted what didn't exist. This realtor tried to serve them. Now, what we don't know is if the realtor offered them to see what was in the 540 to 660. My guess is that he did because that second sentence says they wanted to stay in their budget, which is also a reminder, realtors, honor somebody else's budget. If they tell you they can spend $435 in this current market, you probably want to suggest that they stay around a max of $400 to $410 so they have room if they need to make an offer above asking price to win a home. But if they've said $390 to $435, don't automatically show them $660 unless they've said, yes, we can do that, we're okay with that. Let them have some agency in that decision. So, of course, he was not guilty And I'll tell y'all a little sales tip here. Zoom is a wonderful gift to your business because that couple might have been happy if they'd had a little more transparency in the process. It's one thing realtors are often accused of is the public doesn't always know what we know. They don't have access to the information, which is also why our multiple listing service is frequently under attack because the world wants it. They don't understand that it's not just data, it is also an agreement of cooperation and compensation. So what I enjoy doing with my buyers on first consult is inviting them to a Zoom call, and not just so I can see their faces, because I do like to build connection and interact and make some eye contact, but it's so I can share screen. And when I share screen, I'm already logged into my multiple listing service. Make sure you log in before you share screen so they don't see your password and ID, because that will be a massive violation of your MLS. So I'll share screen. I've got my little search engine up, and I say, hey, what do y'all want? We want to spend 400 Cedar Ridge, 4 bedrooms, 10 acres, brand new. They start, they list off the wish list, and you're like, I'd buy that if it existed, but all right. So when you plug everything in and click search, and you get 0 houses, the buyers can see that you plugged in their criteria and they got 0, and they say, I don't understand. And you say, well, friends, what you described doesn't exist. So do you want to change area, change price, change criteria? What do you want to change? Give them some agency. And they'll say, well, we can spend 500. You're like, all right, backspace, search. All right, we get 1 house. They're like, where's the houses? You're like, well, I told y'all inventory's low. And then you can start to adjust with them and not just be the realtor who's automatically sending random searches without allowing them to see what's there. That is a wonderful tool that we have available through technology to demonstrate your desire to live by fair housing, which is letting people live where they want to live. I frankly don't understand discrimination because it seems to me like you're making it harder to sell a house, and I would think you want to make it easier, but that's just me. So, Let's look at case study 10.2. We have Realtor B working with Prospect C. Hey, he's a married vet, got 2 kids, moving to the city for a new teaching job at the high school. Whoop, whoop. Now, I have 2 high school kids, and so extra high fives to everybody who teaches high school. And Realtor B showed Prospect C some houses nearby. Well, Prospect C met Prospect D there at the faculty meeting, and they said, I'm new, you're new, I teach math, you teach science. What? I'm a vet, you're a vet, I got 2 kids, you got 2 kids. They're besties, immediate besties. Well, Prospect C loved Realtor B and said, hey, you know what? Y'all are looking to be here too? I have the best realtor. Here, call him. He showed me what I wanted. You should love him. He knows VA. He knows the market. He's great. So Prospect D calls Realtor B, and Realtor B took Prospect D out. Same price range, different neighborhoods. Prospect D said, well, I mean, these are fine and all, but I'd like to be closer to the high school. And Realtor B said, I don't know nothing about nothing. I never heard of any houses near that high school that you would qualify for. Well, we might not realize it here, but Prospect D happened to be black. And then there was another faculty meeting, and Prospect D and Prospect C got together and did what people do. They're like, hey, we like this house. Did you see this one? They're comparing, and then they find out the lists were different. And Prospect D said, this is not cool, and filed a complaint of discrimination. Realtor B, guilty or not guilty? In 3, 2, 1, yeah, guilty. And this is where I have to bring up how stupid discrimination can be. Let's just be honest how stupid this is. I mean, for heaven's sakes, Realtor B had shown everything in that area in that same price range. So basically, Realtor had previewed everything and could have said to Prospect D, hey, I saw all 12 of these houses. This one had 14 cats in it, and so it had a scent. And this one didn't have a backyard, but I couldn't see it in the pictures. And could have given him all the inside skinny and probably saved half the time. Instead, took him to different neighborhoods because of skin color. And that's just stupid. So boil down Article 10 and don't be stupid. But we also got to point something else out here. Realtor B obviously was doing a good job, because such a good job that Prospect C was proactively bringing business to him. But he let unnecessary things get in the way. So hopefully Realtor B had a awakening here after all of this and decided to do a much better job. And kudos to him for doing a good enough job to get the referral in the first place, but for shame in not helping somebody live where they want to live. All right, we have case study 10.4. where this one's going to be tricky. So we'll do the tricky one right before we go to our break. So stay with me for 1 second, because you're going to disagree about the guilty, not guilty, and then we're going to uncover the truth. Are y'all ready? All right, so Realtor A listed a house in a new subdivision. Seller X said, I don't want to be in your MLS. I don't want to sign. I don't want to be on the interwebs. And we've probably all had that seller before who craves some privacy, right? Seller X said, you handle my sale quietly, all right, because I need to make sure that the new people will fit into the neighborhood. So Realtor A said, all right, did a mailing to the neighborhood, just listed card, right? Hey, you play a part in the decision of who your next neighbor will be. Realtors have been doing this for time immemorial, right? Go out and help tell the neighbors, I got a listing coming over here. Well, Realtor B was over at his mama's house, and Realtor B probably has an aging mother where you have to go through all the mail. I don't know about y'all, but when you're dealing with aging parents, going through their mail is one of your tasks to make sure that they're handling things. And there was a flyer in here. Well, what's this flyer? Hang on just a minute. What is this? Listing in your neighborhood. Pick your next neighbor. What? So Realtor B filed a complaint. Realtor A, guilty or not guilty for putting out a mailing that says, play a part in the decision of who your next neighbor will be? Man, a lot of real estate marketing websites even sell these cards. And guilty. Here's why. It's easy to fall into a trap, right, of doing things the way they've always been done just because they've always been done that way. That doesn't make them right. And we could fix this mailing so easily, y'all. This one could have been avoided. Instead of saying play a part in the decision of who your next neighbor will be, all it had to say is, hey, tell your friends we have a new listing. That would not have been a violation to say, hey, spread the word. But when you tell the neighbors they get to decide, that's where the problem lies. Now, Realtor B called it out, and we don't know why, right? It could have been because he sniffed out discrimination. It could be because he was upset that there was a listing and he wasn't going to be able to take his buyers there because it was not listed. He could have been mad that it was a violation of clear cooperation. There's lots of different things at play here. But when you boil it right down, take a really good critical look at your current marketing and ask yourself if you need to make some adjustments to what you're already doing to make it better, to make it more palatable and more fair and frankly more legal to bring more neighbors into a house. Now, we're not going to have a discussion about pocket listings and off-market things and what's right and what's wrong, because that's why we have a clear cooperation agreement, but we can discuss how you choose to market a listing. And for many of y'all, I know what you've said in that little case study. When the seller said he wanted people that would fit into the neighborhood, you're thinking, don't take the listing, I wouldn't take it, which is easy to say when you're in an ethics class and hard in a low inventory environment. So if you choose to move forward with that listing, you got to make a stance for fair housing. That's where you might show that fresh corn graphic and say, just so you know, the decision we make about the next buyers for the house revolves around their money if they can buy the house. These protected classes can't be a part of that decision. I just put a house under contract myself. It's a listing that is an estate sale. It's a very emotional sale. The sellers wanted to make sure they had the right buyers to take care of the house and take care of the street and take care of the neighborhood. Well, I don't disclose names on offers. We black them out so they don't go Googling and LinkedIning, and we don't include buyer love letters. We'll talk about that as well. But I told her in writing, please do not try to find out who the buyers are, because we need to stay objectively focused on terms. It is up to them what they do with the house, and your job is to find the best buyer and best terms possible. Make sure that your sellers know that they too need to elevate so that our neighbors have a chance to achieve generational wealth through home ownership. So with that being said, this is another graphic you can throw into your listing presentation. It's something else you can download at nationalethicsday.com/participants. And it's just a graphic we built that says we want all buyers to know about your house. And I show this to my sellers when I'm explaining that we don't care what the buyer looks like, who they're sleeping with, or what language they speak. We just worry about if they've got the financial capability to buy it, and that we want all buyers to know about their house. We're not going to limit the pool. We want to widen the pool, and that's what fair housing does, is it widens the pool. So with that being said, we're a couple minutes late to our break. You do have 15 minutes. This is your last break for your CE people out there. get your coffee, run to the bathroom. Most importantly, go to nar.realtor/RRF and make your individual gift towards the REALTORS Relief Foundation 20th anniversary campaign. Let's see how much we can raise amongst ourselves here on this Code of Ethics Day, where we can show the world that realtors are definitely an army of good. I'll see you after the break. So if you were watching that commercial for the amazing Revive event, the cost is only $19 to participate, and it's for a whole day of this level of stuff. There's Cal Inman from Climate Check talking about climate change and home values. We'll have Rob Hahn and Sam DeBoard talking about clear cooperation. And if you know Rob and Sam, that should be highly entertaining as well as informative. That's going to be my favorite thing to see. We have Katie Johnson, our legal counsel from NAR, to talk about our legal situations. Katie Lance, you all know Katie and her energy and marketing strategies for online. We have Jessica Louts, the Senior Vice President at NAR for Demographics and Behavioral Research, and everything she gives can go straight into my veins as a big nerd. And then we're going to have Dan Smith with a whole bunch of Wall Street disruptors. And these people are all really, I can't read the writing, it's too small, but trust me, it's totally worth you tuning in for. And then Jeff Turner will be there. You know Jeff, he's done 1,000 things around real estate and is now an actual realtor. But that's $19 in August, and I'm your hostess with the mostest that day, so you totally want to be on board. It'll be a great virtual conference. And for those of y'all that are doing your gift to the Realtor Relief Foundation at nar.realtor/RRF, the first of the things we'll be doing a drawing for tomorrow is an $850 value, a set of books and a training kit for how to work in the estate and probate business. So if you're looking to increase your knowledge base in your business, this was donated by Karen at Horizon Real Estate, and she just reached out because she wanted to. Didn't even ask her. That's how amazing she is. And then we have some knives. And I know some of y'all think I shouldn't be handling knives, but I do enjoy cooking, as you know. This was handmade by Eric Kistner, who is a realtor in the Tri-Cities of Tennessee. And of course, it's named after his son, Cash. You can win a knife. I don't remember how many we have. We have several to give away. And then he also helped put together National Real Estate Ethics Day. So you should send your referrals for the Tri-Cities to Eric. He will do a fine job. He's done a fine job with mine. And then to make life easier, on my website, I'm giving away several of the marketing and training information pieces that are there. It'll be a pick which one you want kind of a prize. My girl Michelle told me to give some shout outs, and so here comes some high fives. Michelle Davis, who is Realtor Association of Sioux Empire, has been helping local brokerages make this happen today. So thank you, Michelle, for making life easy for your brokers. The Virgin Islands is with us this year. I love my realtors in the VI, so I'm so glad to see you virtually, and I can't wait to come visit again. Thank you, David Bennett. Ohio Realtors, their amazing staff, Carrie Arblaster and Allison Wiley, brought me on their state podcast to help get members on board with today, and that was a lot of fun. And Alexa Caballo Hughes, the president of Greater Hartford. Alexa and I, if you didn't see our Zoom interview, it's when I accidentally flipped off the camera because I didn't know we were live, but I was mad at technology, and Alexa just smiled and laughed right along with me, so thank you, Alexa. South Padre Island Board, I see you. Lindsay Martinez, thank you. And then we have Yolanda Haygood from Huntsville. All of Alabama is with us this year, so thank you, Katie Richard, and Mark Havala and Flint, East Central Association of Realtors. We're glad to have you as well. Now, I understand from a secret message in my email that some of y'all might be 5 minutes short, so we cut this break to make sure we caught you up. We are going to have more content at the end of your normal hours. If you need 5 extra minutes, just stay tuned in, and we will make sure that you have your time allotted for continuing education. For those of y'all that need to tune out, you'll be able to tune out. If you want to stay put, the last hour that I am doing was not advertised, and I need to record some additional content on fair housing. So if you would like to stay put, you are welcome to hang with me for an extra hour of content. If it makes your business better, it makes my heart glad. So with that being said, here we go. We have some changes to the Code of Ethics. And before we get into everything here, can you please get into a space of Zen? And as my mentor and the late great trainer in real estate, Howard Brenton, always said, get out of judgment and into curiosity. We have to figure things out for the benefit of our neighbors in real estate. So we're going to talk about the changes to the Code of Ethics that were voted on by the NAR Board of Directors in November of 2020. So there is a change to the Policy Statement 29 in your Ethics and Arbitration Manual. The biggest things that you saw changing were that in the past, your Code of Ethics applied to financial situations around real estate. So economic fraud, your behavior in real estate. When we made these changes to the manual, it says that your behavior 24/7 is going to be guided by the code of ethics. So it means you can't be a snake in real life and then be cool in real estate. We're going to expect you to be kind and cool and gracious in all parts of your life. And that's the basic way that it's amended. It also talks about what we do as far as public trust. And when you hear the words public trust, remember that for you in your state, that real estate commission, you are receiving that license and you are entrusted with the best interest of the public. It's why most of your continuing education hours revolve around consumer protection. And that's because as realtors, we're a big deal. And we forget that sometimes. We think it's so nonchalantly to write an offer and unlock a door and stick a house in the MLS, and you forget that somebody's entire financial backing is going to hinge on what advice you give them and what actions you do and don't take. So in Standard of Practice 10.5, the change was that we as an organization will not tolerate hate speech against the protected classes. And we really should be kind to all our neighbors, shouldn't we? I mean, right? So this is where 10.5 came from. This is not NAR trying to curtail your rights of speech. This is not anybody telling you that you're going to be under surveillance all the time. This is an understanding, and we talked about this earlier, what you're doing and what you're saying is how it's going to be perceived by members of the public. And if you are the person who is saying really ugly things about a protected class, does that mean that somebody in that protected class won't feel comfortable calling you? I mean, they may or may not have called you anyway, but this goes into that space of if they don't feel comfortable letting you be their professional realtor, at least giving you a shot at talking to them, maybe they don't meet another realtor as great as you, so would they miss out on your amazing advice? So let's talk about the implications of 10.5 and what it means to you and to the public trust and how this is going to play out. So this is your new Standard of Practice 10.5. And I'll remind you as well, as you have questions and scenarios, please go to the Facebook page, facebook.com/National Code of Ethics Day, where my 7 amazing women are there to answer your questions and provide guidance and counsel as you consider the way to make this a living, breathing part of your business. So Standard of Practice 10.5 says that realtors must not use harassing speech, hate speech, epithets, or slurs based on race, color, religion, sex, handicap, familial status, national origin, sexual orientation, or gender identity. Now you'll notice there that's more than the fresh corn, right? So we have the fresh corn, which is the HUD protected classes. As realtors, our code of ethics already was +1 with sexual orientation and gender identity. So that's why you see this also in 10.5. And this all boils down to realtors shouldn't be denying equal treatment, right? What you do for one, you do for all. And frankly, if what you do for one is say really mean, ugly, hateful things, we kind of don't want you to do that for all, so we'd really hope you be kind, cool, and gracious. So we already have 4 case studies. Now this was passed by the board of directors in our November meeting at 2020. We have had 4 cases already. I'm going to remind you again as we dig into these. When a complaint is spotted, it is turned into the local realtor association. It is then heard by a panel of your peers in the grievance committee or in professional standards. So if you have strong opinions and you have beliefs in how this stuff should work and play out, I can't stress to you enough, you need to volunteer. There's so many opportunities for you to give to your association. This is a really great way to give to your peers by being the voice of reason in these conversations. So we have 4 case studies. We have 10.6. All right, in social media discussions, Realtor A made the following comments. I think black people bring out the worst in us, and we always knew the N-word were violent. They're not Christian. Described black protesters as animals trying to reclaim territory. All right, we can all agree that doesn't fall in be kind, be cool, be gracious, right? So a consumer, ha 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 ha, right? Because people see what you say. I know that you don't remember this sometimes, but everything can be screenshot. Even if you think it's a private message, it can be screenshot. Well, a consumer took screenshots of these comments, including the realtor's name, and filed an ethics complaint alleging a violation of Article 10 as interpreted by Standard of Practice 10.5 to the local Association of Realtors. After review, the association's grievance committee sent the complaint for a hearing. Sometimes your grievance committee can look at it and say, this is shenanigans, and toss it out. This one they looked at, got all the screenshots, and said this needs to be heard. At the hearing, the panel reviewed the evidence that was presented by the complainant, including the screenshots. Realtor A said, yes, I did post those. Totally said that, but this does not stop her ability to provide equal services to anyone because of race. So, panel's looking at this brand new standard of practice, guilty or not guilty? This one we can all say is guilty. So you may be asking me, well, Leigh Brown, why do we have to have a new standard of practice? Well, prior to 10.5, there wasn't really a way that this realtor would get in trouble for making statements that were outside of a real estate transaction about protected classes. So that was where the work group and the committee worked to say, we need to find a way to make each other accountable for what we do and say, and that's where she was now found guilty, whereas prior to this change to the Code of Ethics, she might not have faced any consequences for saying those pretty ugly, awful, hateful things. So our next new case study is 10.7. Realtor A, registered member of political party Y, loved talking politics on social media and also in private conversations, so obviously a political junkie. Well, Realtor A's conversations often got insulting, intimidating, and hostile about the members of Party Z, including aggressively insulting intelligence, implying they were unpatriotic, and telling them to leave the country. And now all of you, this is my favorite part of this case study, whichever party you're in, if you're the one that really, really believes your party is right, you can say, oh, I know exactly which party was which. Yeah, so on both sides of the aisle, everybody thinks their party was the other one. So this is where we all need to say, bring it back to the center and be kind, cool, and gracious. Well, Realtor B saw all of these instances and said, Realtor A, you are harassing people based on being in the other party, and so this is harassing speech. And so that Realtor filed an ethics complaint with the local association, alleging a violation of 10.5. What do you think? Guilty or not guilty? Now remember, this is not one party's right and one party's wrong. What we're talking about here is the party that this person's a fan of. They were tearing down the other side, probably typing in all caps with lots of exclamation points. And do I have to tell y'all, if you're typing in all caps with lots of exclamation points, your best bet is to hit backspace, because that's generally never something you should be adding in. And this one was not guilty. And so for those of y'all that thought this was a clear one, remember, political affiliation is not a protected class. So he might have said some ugly, hateful things and been aggressive online, but that's not going to violate 10.5 because that's not a protected class. I'll just be the one to tell you that if you have a certain set of political beliefs and you want to bring somebody else to your side, thoughtful comments and interesting information are more likely to open a conversational door than hollering and saying ugly things to people, right? You draw more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. I'll just remind y'all, your grandma said it, mine did too, and grandmas are pretty much always right. So let's look at our next case study here. We have 10.8. We have a group of protesters that were supporting equal treatment of women gathered for a march in Washington, D.C. The group requested and was approved for the appropriate permits. Local law enforcement was there for assistance, but there was no criminal activity reported. Realtor A, in response to the march, posted on social media, "These morons have nothing better to do than come all the way to Washington to gripe about a problem that doesn't even exist. This is why women shouldn't be allowed to leave the house. Get back in the kitchen where you belong." Realtor B saw Realtor A's comments and filed a complaint with the local association, alleging the comments against the protesters were harassing speech against members of a protected class, aka sex, which would be women, and as such were a violation of Article 10 as illustrated by 10.5. The grievance committee said, yep, we got a hearing here, and forwarded it over for a hearing. At the hearing, Realtor B said Realtor A's comments constituted objectively harassing speech against individuals on the basis of sex. In response, Realtor A said, my comments were directed at the protesters, which are not a protected class, and that in fact there were men and women in the group. So we land in, again, that gray area of ethics at competing definitions. So he said he was mad at protesters, which are not a protected class. The complainant said the protection didn't apply because he was fussing about women. So, guilty or not guilty? In 3, 2, 1, and guilty. And in this case, you can see why. He might have been angry at the protesters, but in the comments that were made, it said women shouldn't be allowed to leave the house. When you start calling out a protected class, you're probably in violation. So if you find yourself with your blood pressure too high, maybe just turn off the internet. I think that's a great idea. Go for a walk, get a book out, read the paper, do a crossword puzzle. But don't get on the internet if your blood pressure's up about something. Call a trusted friend and say, talk me through this. There are so many ways to handle your opinions that don't involve you saying really aggressive things online, right? All right, so the next case study is probably the one that's going to be the most painful for a lot of people, and let's look at it here. Case study 10.9. Again, if you have questions about this, go to the Facebook page, facebook.com/National Code of Ethics Day. Realtor A was a preacher in his local church and stated before a group of congregants, lesbians and homosexuals are murderers according to the scriptures. One of the congregants, somebody in the church, filed an ethics complaint against Realtor A, alleging that this statement violated Article 10 as interpreted by 10.5. The complainant argued that that remark constituted hate speech. Grievance committee said, let's forward this for a hearing. At the hearing, the complainant said that Realtor A's statement was hate speech because it was insulting and offensive, and because it was based on sexual orientation, which is protected by the Realtor's Code of Ethics, even if not HUD. Realtor A testified that his statement was based on his interpretation of the biblical scripture and that his teachings were designed to help his congregants understand the true teachings of God. Guilty or not guilty? Some of y'all are not going to like this answer. And some of you will, and again, because we don't have equal agreement on things, that's why you want to make sure you're serving and you're a participant in conversations, because this preacher was found guilty. And it's a reminder that when you receive that real estate license and you receive that realtor designation, you don't get to turn it off. You're always a realtor, you're always a real estate licensee. And so if you were that preacher, could there be another way to explain the truth that does not cause a complaint to come forth? It's entirely possible that there is, because you remember the 10.5 talks about harassing speech, epithets, and slurs. You can convey truth in ways that do not hurt other people. And you don't have to agree whether he's right or wrong. We're not talking about that. We're talking about conveyance of a message, and we're talking about perception in the congregation. And that's where we as realtors have to remember we're under scrutiny all the time. And again, it's because you're important. The work that you do is important. And I know that all of you want all of your neighbors to feel they can come to you with their questions and they can come to you with their needs to buy and sell real estate. And so your words are what's going to tell them they can or can't come to you. Now, some people probably don't come to me as their realtor because I do give very direct, straight statements to people. I give very direct truth, and not everybody wants the truth. That's the way I've been branded. That's okay, as long as I'm not using that to hurt protected classes and hurt people. And each of us has to think about that. So that's the scoop on 10.5. I fully expect us to see a lot more cases to occur as members keep an eye on each other. And whether you like it or not, your actions, your words are going to be viewed through the lens of 10.5, whether you're conducting a transaction or not. Be kind, be cool, be gracious. And if you want to get better at fair housing and you want to think about some scenarios that have really occurred, a very wonderful tool that rolled out last year, or maybe a year and a half ago, is fairhaven.realtor. It's a fair housing simulation. And it's really cool because it's built on real-life scenarios that have occurred in fair housing. Sometimes you're in the broker's shoes and sometimes you're in the consumer's shoes. And it's going to cause you to look at things through a different lens. And that's not a bad thing, guys. When you can make yourself stronger and smarter and a little more empathetic to your neighbors, I don't think that's a bad thing. So this is, again, included with your realtor dues, just like C2EX and financial wellness. It'll take you about an hour and a half. Fairhaven.realtor. It's a wonderful sales meeting for you guys that are brokers and want to bring your agents together. Have some robust conversations about how you can be the best proponent possible of fair housing in your office to take care of all of your neighbors. Now, I mentioned those marketing assets before. You see the first one. The middle one's my favorite, full disclosure, because I think it's the most elegant. And there's also the steps. They're located at that link there, nar.realtor/that's-who-we-are/fair housing assets. Or just go to nar.realtor, log in with your NERDS number, and find lots of really great things. If you've downloaded the PhotoFi app, these are all in there as realtor assets. You can add your photo and your company, brokerage, your license number, all your legal stuff, and put together some interesting marketing materials to showcase your desire to be the best possible version of a realtor. All right, Article 11, and I'm apparently going to have to talk a little faster because we did have some extra things to add in there for 10.5. You need to make sure that you know what you're talking about. Be knowledgeable and competent in the fields of practice in which you ordinarily engage. And I talked about this briefly before with be the source of the source. So make sure that if you don't know what's going on, that you obtain assistance and that you disclose your lack of experience if necessary. We know that not all of you know everything because nobody knows everything. And if you're an early career realtor, you know less than the old guard, but all of us have questions along the way and should be asking because the Code of Ethics demands it. So let's look at case study 11.4. Realtor A, hey appraisers, here's yours. Woo! Y'all never make it into the Code of Ethics, so welcome. Realtor A was asked by client B to appraise an office building. Realtor A said, I appreciate you calling me, but I've never appraised an office building. I have zero idea what to do. I'm clueless here. Client B said, but I believe in you, Realtor A, because I love you, and please do it anyway. And I know you don't know squat, but I want you to appraise it. Look, that applies to the property management side, commercial, residential, land. We've all been hired before we knew exactly what we were doing. The important part here is what did Realtor A say? I don't have any idea what I'm doing. So make sure, by the way, friends, if you're invited on that first listing, if you're a new realtor friend or your first buyer, don't be afraid to tell the public that you are an early career realtor, but that you have a mentor, because at all times, all of us do new things. So Realtor C heard, see, this is where realtors can be snitches sometimes, because Realtor C heard that Realtor A had appraised this building and said, you violated the Code of Ethics because you didn't know what you were doing. I should have had that appraisal. That $1,000 should have been mine. All right, well, Realtor C is right. Realtor A did not have any expertise in appraising that building. So is Realtor A guilty or not guilty? 3, 2, 1. Yeah, not guilty. You know why, right? Disclosure. Is this going to be like a common thread? Did y'all notice how often this comes up? If you would just say what's going on, everything will be all right. Because that client believed in the realtor and knew they could learn things and make it better. But at the end of the day, there's going to be moments when you, my friends, should stay in your lane and tell somebody, I need to refer you to someone else. And this is not just by field of expertise. Sometimes it's geography. And as we have larger and more regional MLSs, there's going to be an opportunity for you to go sell a house an hour and a half away. And if you don't know that market, you don't know the DOT, the water and sewer, the zoning situations, what's happening with power, business, climate, a lot of different factors influence property values. Now, if you know that area an hour and a half away because you're there 3 days a week and that's where you grew up, then fine, that's not outside of your lane. But we've all seen somebody who gets a little too hungry reaching outside of where they should be. And if you're going to do that, get a mentor to ride in the passenger seat with you. Get somebody that can guide you and share expertise to make you better. Because again, we all learn. I myself have been learning so much in the last couple of years as I do more multifamily. And I have mentors that are giving me advice and counsel to help me do a better job in that space, which has actually caused me to buy more multifamily myself. So think about how you can continually grow. And don't be afraid to say, I need to know more, let me find a resource. So let's look at Article 12. How old y'all's headshot? Yes, because you're supposed to present a true picture in your advertising and other public representations. And I'm just going to be the one to remind y'all, we have digital phones now. If y'all did not know it, these little things that look like cell phones are actually little computers. These things have better cameras than we had back in the 80s when we had that little 110. Y'all remember the 110 camera with the film that snapped in and you had the 4 flash bulbs that sat on top of it? Young people don't have any idea what I'm talking about. Y'all gonna have to Google it. But these things take a great picture. Use it. I know that you looked great 5 years ago and it was 40 pounds ago and that was your best hair day ever. But if your clients won't represent you when you walk up, you have a problem. So let's look at case study 12.5. Realtor A was a listing agent for client C. Hey, an offer was accepted from prospect D. Woo! And so Realtor A put out the sold sign. Prospect D had to terminate. Oh, so Realtor A put it back on the market in the MLS, but did not immediately remove that sold sign. And y'all know what I'm talking about here, that little sign rider. Well, Realtor B saw the sign rider while out showing houses to prospect E, who said, hey, I saw that house this morning with Realtor A and it wasn't sold. Realtor B said, well, that sold sign is advertising and should not have been up prior to actual settlement of the transaction. What you think? Is Realtor A guilty or not guilty? Guilty. Here's why. We know you forget to pull sign writers in. Do y'all see the problem in the last 2 bullet points? Who showed prospect E that unsold house? Realtor A did. So Realtor A showed a house that the prospect thought was available or under contract and they're out with another agent. If you're confusing your colleagues and confusing the public, then get a good system in place. I've accidentally left sign writers out before, and that's when I have to get a better courier or I have to get up and run over there and grab it. It's just what we do, but you make it right for your colleagues and you don't go sneaky snake around them to get the buyer. All right, case study 12.8. Realtor A decided to sell an investment property he personally owned, so kudos for owning rental property. And it wasn't listed though with his firm. He went for sale by owner or FSBO and sold the property to Mr. X. Mr. X filed a complaint after closing alleging non-disclosure and that Realtor A had special knowledge and expertise that put Mr. X at a disadvantage in the transaction. Guilty or not guilty? A lot of realtors want to go FSBO to save some commission dollars and not pay a split to their brokerage. I mean, I feel that pain. However, definitely guilty here. Why? For non-disclosure. It wasn't a true picture. Because y'all, you may not think you're that special. I keep telling you how important realtors are. You actually do have special knowledge and expertise. That licensing class that you took, a lot of that information seemed irrelevant at the time, but you somehow absorbed it enough to pass the test. That means you know more than the public does. Why wouldn't you say, hey, I'm a realtor, I'm selling my own property? Again, Mr. X might have paid the same price and been just as happy had he been told. Don't try to hide your realtor status. And by the way, you'll see this sometimes with the we will buy your ugly house for cash. If you're a realtor putting those signs out, it needs to say on there, you're a realtor, what brokerage you are, and make sure you're following your state licensing laws and following your commission's marketing guidelines for disclosing brokerages and everything else. So Article 13. Now, I'm sure that at least a couple of y'all out there carry that little PA and you are a licensed attorney. You've passed the bar. Congratulations. The rest of y'all, stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Do not engage in the unauthorized practice of law. And y'all know how realtors do this, right? Writing up clauses. You're like, well, I'm gonna just write this in the No, you are not writing in the contract. You can fill in blanks. You're not a lawyer. That's why I mentioned earlier, you might want to ask legal counsel when we were talking about something earlier. Ask legal counsel because you're not one. Case study 13.2. So we have Realtor A, who is an agent for seller B, listed and sold a small commercial property to buyer C. They were using the standard purchase contract form, filling in the blanks. At the time of contract presentation, Realtor A explained that the contract was prepared by attorneys and commonly used. And hey, buyer, if you want to have an attorney look at it, knock yourself out. They'll charge you by the minute, but that's on you. Buyer C said, no, I'm cool, it's clear, it's satisfactory, signed it right up. Well, at closing, buyer C changed his mind and claimed misunderstanding, and seller B said, well, I'm embarrassed. And so both of them blamed Realtor A for preparing a contract without attorney review. Now, those of y'all that are in New York, you're like, well, Leigh Brown, everybody's attorney review. Every state operates differently, right? Even a poor little Ohio, they don't have standard purchase contracts statewide. So if you have statewide contracts and you don't have to fight with a bunch of attorneys, you're lucky. But regardless, look at this scenario here. Is Realtor A guilty or not guilty for preparing a contract without separate attorney review? Not guilty. You know why? Same thing we've talked about before, be the source of the source. He said, if you want somebody to look at it, you can. The person declined. You can't make them do this, but you can always offer the option, and that's what was done there, and that's what protected him. Now, the seller being embarrassed, that was just kind of crazy because things happen. I would remind you, though, always remind your buyers and sellers of how wild real estate is and how every scenario that you never expected will happen to you, which is frankly why I started my podcast, because nobody understands how things are going to happen in real estate. But if your clients know that wild things will appear, they're less likely to freak out if it happens to them. And then their embarrassment's lower because they're thinking, well, this is one of those things that happens. So case study 13.3. Realtor A was an agent for client B and got an offer on a 25-acre property from customer C. Client B countered above asking price to customer C. Customer C got mad and said, I'm going to call an attorney. Oh, I got a typo there. Sorry, guys. To force client B to sell at the listing price. You can't counter me above asking price. Realtor A said, you can, but that's going to be lengthy and expensive, and they can't enforce the sale. So customer C said, well, then fine, I'll buy it at the higher price. Customer C filed a complaint that Realtor A provided bad advice with his persuasive personality, and therefore he did not call an attorney just because that realtor was so persuasive. I would love to meet Realtor A because I really want to meet that persuasive of a person. So what do you think? Is Realtor A guilty or not guilty? He's guilty. You know why? Not for being persuasive, right? Because some of y'all are persuasive too. You can see why he's guilty. He's guilty because he's like, look, dude, I mean, you can, but it's going to be expensive, it's going to be lengthy, and you're going to lose anyway, but knock yourself out. That's not the same thing as saying you could call somebody, right? So if you're not a lawyer, don't play one on TV. Or what's it? If you slept at a Holiday Inn Express last night, don't be telling somebody what the outcome of their future litigation is going to be, because that's just crazy talk. So then we have Article 14, and this is about punishments, right? So if you were a kid like I was, if you got in trouble, you knew something was going to happen, and if you weren't willing, the punishment got worse, right? But when you are a realtor and you agreed to the code of ethics and you agreed to be bound by it, you also said that you would be a participant when it was time to enforce it. Things happen. People make mistakes. In fact, if we look at the history of complaints that go to grievance panels and hearings with professional standards, the number is going to be around 90% of the people who get in trouble never come back because they made a mistake and then they got some education and said, I can totally do this better, and they go forth and prosper in real estate. But you have to show up when it's time to be enforced upon. So we have some rules you should know about code enforcement. It's your local association. I've said that several times. Not the state and not the national who enforce the code. And your local association also provides mediation and does ethics and arbitration hearings. Only realtors and realtor associates are subject to the code, so your clients don't have to live by the code of ethics, but you do. Any association where you hold membership or get MLS access has jurisdiction. And the associations do not determine violations of law. It's just violations of the code of ethics. So case study 14.2 is probably the most relevant here. Realtor A got busted, violation of the code. The complainants presented their charges. Realtor A was brought in front of the panel and asked some questions. Realtor A said, I plead the fifth. I'm not going to say nothing. And what's my Miranda rights? Not saying a word. All right, so is Realtor A guilty or not guilty of violating the code of ethics, not whatever the other complaint was, but the agreement to be a willing participant? This is where you have to remember different violations fall in different articles. which is how I just totally gave away that he was guilty because he did not willingly participate. Friends, pleading the fifth is what applies in a court of law and what applies when you're talking about your rights under the Constitution. In an association where you agreed to abide by the code of ethics and it said you would be cool in an enforcement hearing, pleading the fifth is not going to earn you anything except another violation. So just come in and tell your side of the story. Maybe you were right, maybe you were wrong, but regardless, you got to pick it up the pieces and keep on moving. So Article 15, there's 1,000 case studies on Article 15. I'm going to cruise through this very quickly, but y'all know what your grandma said, like mine. If you don't have something nice to say, don't say anything at all, right? We are supposed to, as realtors, remember that there's lots of realtor members out there. And yes, there's a willow tree in my slides because there's a lot of realtors that use words that rhyme with willow tree and they say very unflattering things about willow trees. You're supposed to keep your professional hat on at all times. Even if you don't like what a competitor's doing or what they're saying, you got to keep that professional hat on because your comments about other real estate professionals have to be truthful and not misleading. That means opinionizing, right? So thinking about what you say before you say it. So we have case study 15-1. Realtor A was using information from the multiple to create some comparative ads to show how much market share were for him and for his competitors. Realtor A noticed that Realtor Z had used a diagram to demonstrate basically the same thing. Well, this diagram that Realtor Z used showed Realtor A with 10%, but Realtor A said, now hang on just a cotton picking minute, my market share is 11% and this ad is misleading. Is Realtor Z guilty or not guilty of telling misleading information about his competitor? Well, he's not guilty, right? Because he pulled the information from the MLS, disclosed it, and gave information. And we can all say there's a variance that's in play there where it's not like he said 90% versus 11%. It was really, really there at the number. If you're using MLS data, though, make sure you're following your bylaws where you have that little disclaimer that says information from your local MLS. All right, Article 16 is about agency. That's why I say talking about the ring. So y'all are starting to sing that little Beyonce song in your head. If you like it, then you should have put a ring on it. Because we're supposed to respect the exclusive representation or exclusive brokerage relationship agreements that other realtors have with their clients. If they're in a relationship with somebody, don't be trying to bust it up. That's not cool. There's enough out there for all the good, ethical, great people. So in case study 16-7, this one's kind of painful here. So we have client X had listed her house with Realtor A, a 90-day exclusive listing. Client X didn't have any results and told Realtor A, I think I'm going to go with somebody else when this expires. So yay, client was telling the gosh honest truth, how nice that was. And client X then talked to her friend and said, I got to find somebody else. And friend said, oh girl, you got to call Realtor B because I love her. So Realtor B contacted Realtor A and said, hey, what are the dates on the listing agreement? What's the skinny over here? Realtor A said, oh, that's my listing. I ain't telling you nothing, sister, not a word. Realtor B then called client X and said, I'd be glad to discuss your listing upon the termination of the listing. Realtor B then listed the property after it expired. All right, so is Realtor B guilty or not guilty of basically stealing that listing from Realtor A? Not guilty. And you guys can see why, right? Because Realtor B followed all the rules. Clients can reach out to find other realtors. The important thing here is that Realtor B did not call the client first. Realtor B called the other realtor. And in almost every one of your states and bylaws, it says that you can call and find out the terms of a listing. If you refuse, that frees them to call the client. All Realtor A had to say was, it's a 90-day listing, I got another week or so. Then Realtor B would have had to sit back and wait. Don't be a roadblock, figure it out. Look, sometimes you're going to lose a listing. It happens to all of us. And yes, after you lose it, they'll replace the carpet, they'll reduce the price, it'll be perfect, and it'll sell, and you'll have your feelings hurt. It just happens. Get on with your life, friends, and don't get yourself in an ethical mess. All right, case study 16-3. Well, actually, this is happening right now. Let's talk about this one briefly. Realtor A had a home listed, had an open house. And why would we have open houses now? Because y'all love having a line down the sidewalk in 6-foot increments. huge turnouts right now, and buyer B showed up. Realtor A said, hey, buyer B, what's happening? You got a broker? And buyer B said, yes, I have one. And Realtor A said, that's cool. I represent the listing, not you, the buyer. All right, we're copacetic so far. Buyer B said, but I have to leave out of town at 5 o'clock, and I got a briefcase full of cash, and I need to write an offer. We've all had that conversation with the buyer. You're like, for sure, you're really flying this afternoon? You really got a briefcase full of cash? Well, in this one, they did. And so she said to the realtor, I need you to help me fill out a standard offer to purchase, the state paperwork, help me fill in the blanks. It was presented to the seller, and it was accepted. Well, Realtor A was charged with a violation for dealing and negotiating with a party who already had an exclusive relationship. What do you think? Is Realtor A guilty or not guilty? Oh, Realtor A is not guilty. Look, y'all were ready to string her up. Here's the situation. The property relationships and the agency relationships were disclosed. Buyer said, I have an agent. Realtor said, I have a listing here. And the time was in the way. There was not a realtor there to help the buyer. The buyer would have missed the house. So who would pay the realtor for buyer B? Well, that's got to be already worked out between buyer B and that broker. Friends, when you set up those agency relationships, you got to talk about compensation. Who's paying who and when? Because we don't know all those pieces, but we know here that Realtor A was helping the parties move forward and had fully disclosed. If Realtor A said to that buyer, I can't help you until your agent shows up, and that agent's the kind of person like in case study 1 who's vanished for 3 weeks, and you know you've seen that, who loses? The buyer does and the seller does. Realtor A did it the right way. Always try to do things the right way. Ask the right questions. Be fully disclosing so that you can help people make good decisions. Now I'm going to scooch over here to the last article. And remember, stay with me for 5 more minutes so you can complete all of your CE hours. And then we're going to take a short break and do another hour of content. Article 17 is about arbitration. This one's kind of dry and boring unless you're a total association and realtor nerd. So for those friends, here we go. In arbitration, we've agreed to arbitrate our contractual and specific non-contractual disputes with other realtors and with clients. This is that clause that you should explain in your agency agreement that says, hey, if we get in a fight, we go to arbitration first. That's pretty much how I explain it. And when you think about this, right now we have a lot of our associations that are geographically crossing some lines. We've had a lot of mergers and acquisitions in the association world. A lot of MLSs have done mergers and acquisitions, and so there's a lot of fluidity, and everything's not quite as tiny and localized as it was 40 years ago. So let's look at case study 17.3, where Realtor A was a listing broker and belonged to the X Board of Realtors. Realtor B was the cooperating broker and belonged to the Y Board of Realtors. Well, they disagreed about whether Realtor B should get any of the money. Well, the property was located in the jurisdiction of Realtor A's board, so Realtor A said, well, then we're going to fight this out at my board X. And Realtor B said, fine. And the arbitration panel found in favor of Realtor A. But then Realtor B said, well, hang on a minute. I want my board, the Y board, to contact the X board to do some more arbitration because he didn't like the outcome. The Y board said, nah, we ain't playing, and Realtor B has already said yes, and so this is a waste of time and energy. So do we have a case here or no case? There are 2 different boards, 2 different jurisdictions. We have no case, and you see why, correctly? You don't get to jump from board to look for the right outcome. You lean into the professional volunteers, or not paid, but they're professional volunteers who are spending the time there, who have put together a chance for you to have your side heard. If you've agreed to go by Article 14 and be a willing participant, you agree to be a willing participant. You can't just jump around looking for a better answer because that doesn't solve anything for anybody. So with that being said, I'm going to remind y'all of 2 other initiatives that are happening at the National Association of Realtors right now. One is under President Charlie Oppler, we have this desire to showcase to the world how much time you guys spend in your communities doing things that aren't real estate related. So maybe it's volunteering at your church or your synagogue or your mosque, or maybe it's working in the food pantry or the battered women's shelter. Maybe you volunteer at the PTA or you pick up trash on the weekends. Y'all spend a lot of hours making the place where you live better. If you will go to nar.realtor/RGN, that's realtors are good neighbors, we're looking to accumulate hours, and the goal is to showcase 5 million hours that are spent annually by you on your communities. Extra bonus, if you upload some photos of these activities for you, your agents, your brokerage, you may wind up in NAR's social feed, and the world can see how much good you're doing. So think about going there to put your hours in so that as an organization we can talk about how realtors are definitely an army of good. And there's all kinds of code of ethics products available in the Realtor store. There's updated information with the actual code of ethics so you can read the whole thing. There's the pathways to professionalism. There's tons of stuff in there to make you a stronger realtor, a stronger brokerage, and a stronger association. So just go to store.realtor.org/COE, and if you take off the slash, that's where you can buy realtor shirts and hats and promotional items to put out into the world. So thank you again for tuning in. Thank you again for your questions and for helping the social world see a little bit different side of realtors today. An extra thank you to my Code of Ethics panel of advisors who have spent time answering questions online. And an extra special thank you to Mark and the team at the Citrus Valley Association and RE Events who have provided a studio and streaming capabilities for today. They are wonderful partners to have, and I'm very grateful. And remember, if you go right now, because we're almost out of time, go to nar.realtor/RRF, and then tomorrow you might be the winner of one of Eric's knives, or of Karen's probate and estate sale training program, or some of the Leigh Brown marketing stuff that I'll make available. But regardless, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for choosing this profession. Because if you've spent this much time in an ethics class and you stayed awake the whole time, high five to you. But also remember how much you're needed in the marketplace. Friends, hedge funds are buying real estate at an unprecedented rate. There are so many venture capital companies that want to be in real estate, and they just don't understand how important it is for our neighbors to have a realtor at their side because there's emotion tied up with this financial transaction. I'm grateful to each of you for being that professional in your market, and if there's anything I can do for you, you know where to find me. And until then, I'll see you next year for more Code of Ethics training, but hopefully I'll see you in November at the NAR convention in San Diego. And if you want more training, stay tuned, because after about a 3-minute break, we're going to continue with some more fair housing training. And thank you again. I'll see you next time. So hello to any friends who have stayed for the extra content on the live stream. You didn't even know this was going to happen. But if you were really just going to go sit around and stare at Facebook, you may as well hang out for more real estate information to make your business stronger. I totally forgot to leave up my contact information at the end of our Code of Ethics class, but here it is if you didn't have it. Find me on any of the social networks. If you're not already following, then frankly, what are you waiting on? Because I love sharing ideas with other realtors, and I frankly love a good laugh because we don't laugh enough in life. Well, there went my slides went black. Okay, so I think Jesse is changing something in the background. We're missing our extra slide deck. So I'll just talk to y'all for a second while we get the second slide deck straightened out. Again, you can make a donation at nar.realtor/RRF. Can I say that enough times that y'all can all say it at home now too, so that we can make this an amazing fundraiser for the REALTOR Relief Foundation? We don't have any extra slides. So let's go to a quick break here. Can Jesse go to a quick commercial and we'll find that slide deck? Because Obviously, we're totally organized here on this end. You guys know what that feels like when you go to a listing appointment and you have to make it up on the fly. We'll fix this really quickly. This was my fault for not having the correct version loaded up for today, so I appreciate any of you that hung out and waited for us a couple extra minutes so we could have a more in-depth conversation about fair housing and real estate. If you are active in the market today, then you have seen or even used what is probably the most egregious violation of fair housing we have ever seen since the days of redlining, and that's known as buyer love letters. Now, when I talk about buyer love letters, the first response I get back from realtors is, what's wrong with them, Leigh? We've been using them forever. Everybody uses them. It's a standard of practice, right? Well, this goes back to what we've talked about before. Just because something's always been done doesn't make it right and doesn't make it the best way to do things. Buyer love letters, if you're not familiar, because you haven't had a listing or you haven't been fighting to win a listing with someone, are a letter that accompanies an offer to purchase that tends to explain more about the buyers in hopes that it'll activate the emotional centers of the seller and make the seller love them as humans so that they can win the house. Now, these have been around for decades. We've taught about them for decades. I remember hearing about these when I first got into real estate 21 years ago. I was told in a training class and convention it was a great way to stand apart. At that time, the buyer letters were positioned in this instance that you see on your screen here. Dear seller, I love your house. I really enjoyed the grounds and thought a personal letter might influence you, so sincerely, buyer. There's very little personal information in there. It's just a little something to go with an offer. Well, as you guys know, realtors are always thinking outside the box and always going to one-up each other and make things bigger, bolder, and brighter, more creative in efforts to win. But buyer love letters right now have created a real problem when it comes to fair housing. The letters now have gone from being specific to the property to being very specific about the buyers, and I mean very specific. We see letters like the ones on your screen here, where you have photos of the family. You have where they work, their ages, what they do for fun on the weekends, their religious setup, their family setup. I mean, it's like all the protected classes in one, if you're paying attention to these letters. And you're saying, but Leigh, my job as a buyer's agent, as a fiduciary, is to win the house for my clients. But I want you to consider something. You don't know all the parties involved. And we do know that as humans, this is not something that's a creation of the current world. This has always been in existence. There are what we call implicit biases and unconscious biases, where you are just going to prefer some people more than other people. Just as, for example, you tend to prefer people that are in your family because you've known them the longest. You prefer people in your faith home because you've been around them. People tend to prefer their own race. They tend to prefer their own gender. They have preferences that are built into their brains. And your protected classes get into there. It doesn't mean everybody acts in a discriminatory manner, and I am not suggesting that in the slightest. What I'm telling you is that your brain has a lot of different neurons firing at all times, and it's okay to be human. In fact, you're supposed to prefer the person you're sleeping with over the rest of the world. You're supposed to prefer your kids over other kids. That's just life. But when it comes to real estate, as realtors, our job is to help our clients make good objective decisions based on the terms of an offer and not get into these classes and these groups that we can't control. So, for example, you write a buyer love letter, and it's got all these photos of your client. This is the husband, this is the wife, these are the 2 kids. Well, you present this offer, and the seller's agent receives it, presents it to the seller. The seller looks at these pictures and says, I can't stand these people. I had a fight with him at the PTA 10 years ago. They ain't getting my house. All right, well, that's not even the protected class. That's a scenario from the past. But guess what? Your clients aren't getting the house now. But then what if they look at that picture and say, I don't like people that are that color. I don't like people who can walk. I lost my legs in a hunting accident, and I'm mad. I don't like family structures that don't look like mine. I don't this and I don't that. And the seller's agent didn't know that that was all going on in their seller's brain. And the seller says, rejected, poof. Seller's agent takes it back to buyer's agent and says, you got rejected. And the buyer's agent says, why? And the seller's agent says, because he went with another offer. But you don't all know all the things that add up to say maybe that's why the buyer lost the house. Not because of their offer, but because of one of their immutable characteristics or one of the protected classes. So look at these letters and ask yourself, could there possibly be somebody out there that would look at these groups and have something against them? Yes. Our whole world is built on identity politics right now, and so people look for ways to divide each other up. So as a realtor, if you're looking for ways to divide, That's not going to move forward the idea of fair housing where all of our neighbors should have access to real estate if they get their finances in line and it works for them. They shouldn't lose that chance at generational wealth because of protected classes. So I'll challenge you with these buyer love letters. How do you stop them? We have to think about how some practices get out of hand. And as a realtor, do you get how important you are? What if you're the only realtor that buyer talks to and they never win a house because you keep putting love letters forward in a neighborhood that doesn't want your buyers? What if your actions are getting in their way? It can happen. As a seller's agent, sometimes you have a client who's got some proclivities that are against fair housing. What do you do when the inventory is so low that somebody else will take that listing? How do you stand up for fair housing in a market that is so challenging? The first thing I'll tell you is that you need to know those protected classes. You need to be paying attention to the fresh corn, to those groups. And you need to think about what your actions can be as a true professional realtor. Now, you probably can't see it on your screen because the font's really small, but the middle letter here was written by the agent about the clients. You want to talk about putting yourself in harm's way. This is not even the agent as a messenger. This is the agent creating the letter that could be construed as violating fair housing. Don't do that. Think about how you as a professional can craft the best offer possible. Help them look at terms. Ask questions of the listing agent. Or, I know it's wild and crazy, call the listing agent or text me and say, hey, I'm sending you an offer. What matters to your client? Sometimes things matter, sometimes they don't, but golly, just reaching out makes you stand out in a crowded marketplace far more than this will. Now, as an agent, I do primarily work with listings. I do work with some buyers, but I've had to consider, how do we manage this in a world where everybody wants to fight all the time? The first thing is, if you're a listing agent, you got to figure out how you're going to be an active proponent of fair housing on the side of the listing. Your job as a realtor is to educate your clients, right? We agree on that. You educate them on best marketing practices. You educate them on what the MLS is. You educate them on agency. What happens if you start educating on fair housing as well? So I educate mine on federal fair housing laws, and I talk about that fresh corn. I've offered y'all the graphic. Again, it's available for download at nationalethicsday.com/participants, and the potential pitfalls of buyer love letters. I bring samples of the letters that I've received to show my sellers. Y'all, my favorite one that I've received in recent time was a buyer love letter that of course included photos and all the details, including the detail that the reason they didn't have a larger deposit and down payment was because they just completed their 5th round of IVF. And I saw that and I said, what? That's TMI. My Sunday school class shouldn't know that much less some random seller, and I'm trying to win the house, and my sellers looked at that, because this was before I realized I needed to make these things go away, and they looked at that and said, what? And I said, I know, what? Well, we didn't take their offer for a lot of reasons. There were other offers that were far stronger, but it really stood out to me as something that didn't make sense. It was too much information. And that one didn't even, well, I guess you could say it violated fair housing, familial status. So anyway, I show these letters to my sellers, and I say, I need your permission, Miss Seller. I need your permission to strip these from our offers so that when I bring you an offer, I'll bring you the offer paperwork and the pre-approval or cash proof of funds, signed disclosures, all the pertinent information. But you don't need this emotional shenanigans. You don't need it. And after my sellers see a couple of examples, they say, thank you very much. Yes, you have my permission to strip those. Now, I would suggest that you verify with your legal counsel that you can do so. I have verified with my legal counsel and with my legal hotline in North Carolina that with seller permission, I can strip these from the offer because they are not pertinent to the terms of the offer to purchase and contract. So it's very important that you get proactive, right? And let your sellers be a part of this. Don't just do things without educating people on who you are as a realtor. Because by the way, friends, this is one of the most amazing things you can do to differentiate yourself in a crowded marketplace. We currently have more realtors than we've ever had before. The competition is strong. And when you go to a listing appointment, you're probably not the only realtor or broker they have called. So when you're talking to them, let them know that one of the primary jobs of you as a realtor is to absorb a lot of this emotion so that they can focus on the objective terms of the offer and stay focused on being the best possible seller when it comes to fair housing. Help them make great decisions, because if you have 5 offers and they're muddied up by the emotion, it makes it hard for your seller to select carefully. Plus, they may wind up with an offer that's not going anywhere because they got suckered into the emotional piece. Now, after my sellers have given me that permission, I put it in the MLS down in the agent remarks that we will not accept buyer love letters. You have to make sure it's fair to all parties, and I want to make sure that all of my colleagues in the marketplace know right up front, we're not looking at buyer love letters. We're going to strip them from your offers. That makes it fair, because when you think about fair housing and what you do for one, you do for all, it should also apply to your colleagues. Treat your colleagues fairly as well and give them equal information, so they're not spending time creating these and then you're stripping them out. I also will tell you that your sellers need to remember that the most important thing to focus on in offerings is the objective criteria. Time frames, deposits, personal property, price, financing capabilities. Help them stay focused on objective criteria. This is your primary job as a realtor, and can I remind you, friends, you want to differentiate from hedge funds and from online interlopers to your business and all the venture capital money. The single best thing you get to offer your neighbors is you. You as an expert and a professional who are there to guide and protect them and help them stay focused on great decisions. Now, I'll also tell you, I document all the offers that I receive, and I want my seller to document why they selected the offer they selected. If you have 24 offers on a listing and they select offer number 17, make sure they jot down, we're taking offer 17 because it's the fastest close and it's cash. Great, let them tell you why. That will give you some protection in the future should somebody come back and say, we felt we were not treated fairly because of a protected class. Now, when you're thinking about these love letters, there's lots of different things you've got to consider. The first one being, wording. If you would like to have the wording that I use, this is what's in my MLS agent remarks on my listings. You're welcome to copy this. Verify with your legal counsel in your state, of course. Buyer letters to sellers not accepted and will not be presented with any offer. Please do not include. That's what helps you. Now, if you have a buyer who insists on writing one, that's an entirely different can of worms, right? Because they know the emotion is one of their keys, and buyers talk to each other, sellers talk to each other. We talked about this in the front part of the ethics class, how many of the things that you say and do will be screenshot and captured. Your sellers and buyers, when they're conducting real estate, a lot of their friends are conducting real estate as well, and so they see all these conversations. So on the buyer side, do the same thing with talking about fair housing, talking about the protected classes. Now, perhaps you have a buyer that says, Leigh Brown, I hear what you're saying, but my friends won their house because they wrote a great letter, and we insist on writing a great letter. All right, if they want to write a great letter, give them the list of protected classes and say, just make sure that none of these are included in your letter. The last buyer I did this to, she looked at the protected classes and she said, everything I say is going to be in a protected class. I said, that's why we don't write these things. Even as simple as the signature at the bottom with her name and his name falls into familial status. And so she started thinking about it, and she realized that she could write a letter that was, I really like the siding because it's not hardboard, and I like the kitchen because you added granite. That wasn't going to accomplish any emotional tricks, so we just wrote a great offer and we won the house. So think about what options you can offer to your buyer. The first one is a lender love letter. Many of you have amazing lender partners, and in every association we have affiliate partners who will be absolutely at your side throughout this process. If your lender can write a love letter, that can help. And I don't mean just your standard pre-approval letter, this buyer's cool. I mean a letter that says, I have investigated this buyer. We pulled the credit on June 10th. We did verification of employment on June 11th. They are good to go until June the 22nd. If your lender can give some specifics as a listing agent, that gives me so much comfort that, man, this person really does have current information. Every one of us has been in the business for more than 6 months. At some point, you've had a pre-approval letter that turned out to be worth nothing because it was out-of-date information. or it was the buyer's brother-in-law's former colleague from Wachovia. See, if you're from Charlotte, you're like, that's a long time ago, Leigh. I know, but that's where some of these pre-approval people come from, or they come from the interwebs. It's your local partner that's going to help your buyers win. It's not that random, faceless, online, imaginary mortgage company. These are other ways that we help our clients see where we are. Everything I tell is in stories and anecdotes, right? So I have a buyer right now where we're having trouble getting the appraisal scheduled. And they said, can't you do something? And I said, I wish I could, but you did not choose my local lender. You interviewed 5 lenders, and I'm glad that you interviewed, but the one you selected is not local and it's not somebody that I know. I have no pull with that person. Whereas my local person had pretty much the same bid. They didn't like him as much, but he would have helped us through the process. And so help your clients see that the times that you need a lender are times like needing a lender love letter. Now, another idea that I have here came from a realtor named Leah in Wisconsin. I would tell you her last name if I could remember it, but I met her on Clubhouse, and this is several months ago. If you're not in that social media platform, it's very interesting. She suggested a buyer agent love letter, and I said, oh, do tell, sister, and so she sent me a copy. And this is one of the available downloads for you, so if you hang tight till the end, you'll get that screenshot where you can download everything. In the buyer agent love letter, you're telling the listing agent why you are their partner in this process. So we promise full communication, and we promise to help when things are tough, and we help with deadlines, we'll help with DocuSign. We will be communicative and be the one who helps get this thing over the finish line. You forgot sometimes you might be the best advocate ever for your buyer, but you might also be the one that the listing agent can lean on when they need a little bit of help here and there. And I don't mean that you're avoiding your fiduciary responsibilities or that you're changing sides, but we have to work together. And not every realtor does that, so be the one that does. It can totally set you apart. This is a copy of that letter. Again, I'll make it available to you as a download. The yellow parts are where we change out the information based on the name of the person here and there. I introduce my closing coordinator here as well, so they know there's more than one person in communication. For example, right now while I'm teaching this class, I'm not able to answer my phone or answer emails, but my amazing team at home does handle all of these things. In fact, they're probably better than I am, so they keep things moving, but it's important for the other agents to know who my people are so that they can stay focused as well. Now, when you're thinking about how you can get yourself in that lineup to where you can provide the really amazing information that your clients need to help them win, it all goes back to intake sheets. And if you ever want to know what made my business explode, what took me from selling as much as the average realtor to being one of the top agents in Charlotte, it's as simple as this. You need to ask the same questions of everybody who calls you every time. Again, what you do for one, you do for all. So with my intake sheets, and by the way, these are available for download. There's a buyer one and there's a seller one. When my phone rings, hey, Leigh Brown, I want to sell my house. The first thing I say, great, may I ask you a few questions? They'll say yes. Every seller expects to be questioned. So then I can go down my intake sheet and ask all of the necessary questions to prepare a personalized presentation for them. If a buyer calls me and says, hey, how much is this house on Arlington? I can say, may I ask you a few questions? Because they'll ask you how much it is, right? That's just a buyer habit. They know how much because they have the app. I want to make sure I can treat them professionally. And you ask everybody this, may I ask you a few questions? Now, occasionally some buyer will say, no, you cannot. You have to show it because you're the listing agent. And that's when I say, all right, thank you for calling. I can't help you if you won't answer my questions, right? Because I'm not going to go be a Pop-Tart realtor that's totally not safe for me or for my seller or for the buyer. But you got to treat everybody the same way. And we do know that for some agents in some markets, when they hear an accent like mine, we get treated poorly. For whatever reason, people from New York and Connecticut seem to deduct 100 IQ points when I talk because I do have a country accent. Well, is that fair? No, because I can talk circles around them. I talk fast and Southern, and I'm very smart. But making assumptions is what gets us in trouble all the time. If somebody calls you with an accent, what do you say to them? May I ask you a few questions? If they say something you don't understand, say, do you mind repeating that? I didn't listen fast enough. Don't be afraid to ask somebody to repeat if you didn't understand. There's so many ways for us to do a better job for our public, And again, this is the secret. The other secret here, by the way, I print the buyer ones on blue paper and the seller ones on yellow paper so I can find it on my desk, which totally reminds me there's a buyer I need to call back when we finish this class. I already mentioned to you guys the Code of Ethics tools that are available to you. You could use as a training in your class, that you can use as a way to educate your other agents, to educate your marketplace. And I'm totally missing a slide here, so let me just talk to y'all for a second, because you can totally ask questions about fair housing in addition to Code of Ethics of my Code of Ethics advisory panel at facebook.com/National Code of Ethics Day. I wanted to tell you for a minute, too, how important fair housing is, not just in your actual interactions with buyers and sellers, but in your interactions in the wider world. Now, we talked about how in the Code of Ethics, Standard of Practice 10.5 expects us to behave well about the protected classes with no harassing, no slurs, no epithets. And you think about this. It looks like it only applies in certain categories and in certain areas. There's a new social media site called Clubhouse. Now, Clubhouse is new, it's different. It was iPhone only, now it's open to Android. You can find anybody in there talking about anything. It's an audio chat site. Well, in that audio chat site, there's a lot of conversations about real estate. There's a lot of conversations about fair housing. There's conversations about race in real estate. There's conversations about investing. And that's not even to look at the rest of the world outside of real estate, but we know how, as realtors, we like to hang out in real estate spaces. Well, in Clubhouse, and I'm at Leigh Brown on Clubhouse, by the way, so you can go in there, you can chat. The rooms are not recorded. There is no chat function. It's just voices. Not everybody can speak. You have to be on the stage to speak, and then you can turn your microphone on and off. I mention this because every evening during the week, there's a real estate networking room, and it's been fantastic. I have loved meeting some realtors from around the country that I had not previously met. There are new realtors, there are about to be realtors. They're learning the space, they're learning how to find each other all over the country, all over the world. It's fantastic. Well, many times in Clubhouse, I have fussed about buyer love letters. I am the one who wants to make sure we understand how dangerous and deadly that practice is, and that it's a top priority for HUD, which is Housing and Urban Development. Well, in one of these networking rooms one evening, I was getting some text, "We need you in here." All right, so I went and logged into the room. They pulled me up onto the stage where another realtor was talking. He happened to be from California. And he was explaining how he was using buyer love letters to win. Well, this was why they had called me into the room, because several of my colleagues in there knew that I could educate him on a better way to think about buyer love letters. So I explained that, while it may be a practice in the marketplace, we have to understand that almost every time they're a violation of fair housing. Well, this agent said to me, "Well, that might be true where you are, Leigh Brown, but it is not true in my market." And I said, "Well, friend, we're talking about federal law. We're talking about federal fair housing." I said, "These are protected classes. The buyer love letters with photos and videos and explanations of everybody in the house are in violation of fair housing. They are going to cause issues. HUD is watching these." And he said, "In my market, we get 50 offers on a listing, and if I don't have a love letter, I won't win." I said, "I understand where you're coming from. However, redlining was also standard practice in the 40s, 50s, and 60s until it came to a stop. And it needed to stop prior, but people kept doing it because it was what had always been done. And just because something is being done doesn't make it right." Then he patted me on the head, which if you know me at all, you know that made me about 4,000 degrees of angry. And he said, "It sounds to me like you're a little emotional about this." And then I came unglued, and my text blew up because all of my friends that were in the room knew I was about to come unglued. And I might have explained things to him in a less calm fashion than I'm talking to you right now. It really made me angry because he came out and said, y'all, he said, "I don't have to follow federal fair housing. My job as an agent is to win the house for my clients." So he said this out loud, assuming the room unrecorded, unmonitored, that he can get away with it. And I don't know that he thought he was getting away with anything. He just said he didn't have to follow it because he was going to get that house for his clients no matter what. Well, I was so angry at this point. I had done what I can do. I screenshot his face so I wouldn't forget who he was. And then I left the Clubhouse platform. And I went over to Twitter, which is where I go to blow off steam because it's pretty much a dumpster fire on Twitter at any given time. Well, in my messages on Twitter, I had a message from someone, and it said, I was in the Clubhouse room with you just now, and I wanted to thank you for supporting fair housing. Couldn't believe what that agent said. Well, I didn't know who this guy was, but he was just in Clubhouse with me, so I responded back and said, yes, I know, right? I can't believe this. I was flabbergasted that he said he didn't have to follow federal fair housing. So this gentleman and I chatted a little bit, and then I clicked on his profile, and I said, oh. So I screenshot his profile, and I sent it over to Shannon McGann, who is the NAR Chief Advocacy Officer, our chief lobbyist in Washington, D.C. She also happens to be one of the 20 most powerful people in D.C. Not most powerful women, most powerful people. Well, what? So I sent him to Shannon, and I said, who is this guy? And she said, why are you talking to him? So I explained to her what went down. Turns out that this gentleman that I didn't know, never heard his name, never saw him before, is the head of the consumer division of the CFPB, the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau. He did not understand what was happening in the market. He did not know about these buyer love letters, but he could see how they would be detrimental to the protection of consumers and how they could be a violation of fair housing. And so at that point, he pulled the CFPB in to talk to HUD about what they could do to make this practice go away. And that agent put himself in the crosshairs of two federal agencies that I don't want to be in the crosshairs of, by his own actions, by his own words. I point this out to you for a couple of reasons. The first one is, what you're saying matters. What you're saying will be heard by somebody who will take action on it at some point. And when you're actively not trying to get better, that's not a great thing for any of us. It's a totally different thing to say, man, I've been using those letters. I didn't see it in that way. I'm going to do it better. That's my kind of realtor. I don't expect perfection from anybody, but I do feel like it's important to hear when you have dissenting information so we can all get better together, so we don't have to get buried in a sea of paperwork of turning each other in. The wildest thing to remember here, too, is that your violation with HUD for a fair housing violation, your first violation, first time when you get busted, yeah, it's $50,000. And I don't know about y'all, but since I told y'all already that I bought this dress at Marshall's on the clearance rack, I don't have $50,000 for a fair housing violation when I absolutely can be doing a better job every day. And if you think fair housing violations aren't happening, you need to go read the Newsday article about the Long Island Board from November of 2019. And that is not a slam on all the members of the Long Island Board. It's not even a slam on all the realtors that were investigated. But when there's violations that are happening, whether it is malicious intent or it is somebody that was not trained properly or somebody that wasn't thinking about their words, they're all opportunities to get better. And we have to remember that the way one board of realtors is perceived is how we're all perceived. Because we're never just one realtor, we're always the realtors, all y'all realtors, whether you're on Clubhouse or Facebook or interacting with clients every day. I know I'm a better person today than I was 20 years ago, and frankly, I'd be ashamed if I weren't, because we should all be looking to grow and get better and to take a better look at how we can help our neighbors have an opportunity to save their money and have a down payment and buy a house. Because not everybody's going to make it there. Not everybody's going to have the financial discipline or the desire to have the responsibilities of home ownership. That's not our decision to make. Our job is to make sure that they have the tools and the education and the information available, that if that's a goal, we can help them get there somehow, some way. And maybe it's not in today's wild market, but maybe 3 years from now they'll be ready. The question is, will they call you? Because they would want to if you've taken good, fair care of them. And if you've taken good, fair care of the marketplace that you operate in. So as you think about fair housing differently, make sure that you go to my website. You can go to the website here. You can text the word ethics to 877-379-4696. You can also go to nationalethicsday.com/participant. You can download the graphics that we've talked about in the class. You can download the intake sheets and the agent love letter. There's so many tools on there. Frankly, I would tell you that I'm efficient for having them all in one place, but it's pretty much just me being lazy and having them all in one place, so it's easy for you to download everything. But there are so many opportunities that we can take advantage of to make our listing presentations stronger and more educational, make our buyer consultations stronger and more educational, and overall provide a different level of experience with a realtor who is definitely not just a realtor, but a partner in building a different financial stability for the future. The last thing I'll tell you is that private property rights are definitely under attack right now. And our job as purveyors of the American dream is to protect private property rights. And that looks different in different states and municipalities, but it's important for you to be involved. So please pay attention to your local planning and zoning meetings. Be a voice at the table. Learn about ADUs, accessory dwelling units, and what you can do to help solve the housing shortage in your community through creative ways to find opportunities for granny flats and for apartments that can be created from former garages. Realtors can bring an entirely different viewpoint to all these conversations, and that's when we can take fair housing and really turn it into opportunity for all of our neighbors. So thank you for staying around for a little extra content. I hope that you have learned something that will help make your business stronger, that will make you a better proponent of everything that America has to offer in the communities in which we live, and that instead of thinking about your phone ringing with contacts and leads, that now you'll think about those folks as neighbors and what you would do to help your neighbor build a future that looks different than the one they have today. Thank you so much, and I will see you guys soon.